Now you might pray to God, y'all, but I like Lucifer best. Sunday school is a place for fools. It's hot in hell, but the devil's cool. Don't keep Satan waiting. Don't keep Satan waiting. So don't just sit there, join the club. Sell your soul to Beelzebub.
Hey everybody, as I Count Jackula, favorite satanic streamer, here once again for another satanic stream, letting you know that the sin is about to begin. My guest today is Diamanda Hagen, who you may know I worked with over at Channel Awesome when I was both on that and it was a thing. If not, she is an aficionado of cult movies. Like, the more obscure and unfamiliar to a Western audience, the better. But we are having a few technical difficulties, so we're going to try to iron them out really quickly. However, we should have her on voice. Diamanda, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm coming through at least on audio. Skype seems to think that I'm on visual, but if I'm not on visual, apologies.
Okay. Wow, this is getting odd.
Oh yeah, I can see it following the stream now.
Yeah. Your voice is in the stream, but I'm having trouble like getting the
So you turned it off.
Video on here. That's got to be on my end. Let me make sure let me see if I'm coming through for you. I am not. Why?
No.
Why are we not? Why is that not happening? Game Capture Pro. What do you mean Game Capture Pro? No, you're supposed to be on virtual camera. What are you talking about?
Yeah, audience, I'm currently sitting in a dark room, looking all moody and stuff. So, you're missing a huge amount.
Oh, wait. All right. Do you see me now?
Oh, I think I do. Do you see me?
I see you, but the streaming software is having issues.
Oh, it's even better.
I know, right? It's like, hey, what's going on? We don't understand. Oh, maybe I have to have it up. Maybe that's the sweetness. Maybe that's the ticket. Oh, Skype, stop fucking with me. Let's see. All right, there's Skype. Maybe if I import a new window, maybe that'll do it.
You see, I could be editing a Doctor Who video right now and, suffering because I fucking hate that episode of Doctor Who, but instead I'm here.
Which episode? Is it one of the old Who's or?
One of the older new Who's, The Stolen Earth. I've been putting it off, for literally years, finally working on editing it.
Wait, the Stolen Earth, that was like the Tennant meets Davros, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh, you didn't like that one?
No, I hated that one, and I hated the second part, so I'm going to be doing these two. I wrote them about 2 years ago, and I kept putting it off and off and off because there's a lot of work in doing the Doctor Who videos but I'm finally sucking it up.
Oh man, let's see. Maybe video capture device will do it. Will you do it? Will you do it? Nope. Not a video capture device. Display capture. All right, how about that? Oh. We're having some success with that.
Yeah, Joseph Hall, Richard Dawkins was in that one.
Wait, he was?
Yeah. He's brought in as the real life science person to discuss the situation with the Earth being stolen and stuff like that on the media. And I point out that I doubt this is the intention, but bringing in Dawkins, the arch atheist, to talk about the Earth being moved, could be a reference to Galileo. Basically saying, and yet it still moves, after he's made to recant his idea that the Earth moves around the sun. I
Ah.
I doubt that's what they were going for, but it works.
It's sometimes hard to tell how to put it. Davies is interesting because he's very tricky. He's tricky like that. He will absolutely da 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 da. Yeah, see what I mean? Like we're doing it. It's happening. Hold on. I
He's
don't
a
know.
consummate showman to the detriment of everything else.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think he's a better writer than I think he's a better showrunner than Stephen Moffat, definitely. I'll say that. I'll say
Oh,
that without equivocation. I like Stephen Moffat is a good writer, but he's not a good showrunner. They are different skills. Da, da, da,
okay.
da,
So I'm
da,
appearing
da.
on the stream now, but
Yeah,
so everyone got
we're
they got
getting
an eye
there.
full.
We're
They
getting
got an
there.
eye full of me fucking around with my hair. Fantastic.
Okay. All right. Come on. We can do this. It's happening. It's happening. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Let's
Bam.
discuss high. Let's discuss highbrow stuff because I didn't listen to audiobook versions of Edgar Allan Poe's The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket and Eureka, a Prose Poem, his 5 hour sort of poem about how he thinks the universe works, without being able to discuss it with someone.
Okay. 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 Is that it? Yeah. Okay. All right. All
It's
right.
vanished again.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Okay. All right. There we are. There we are. There we are. We got it go. We got it going. All right, we're good. We're good. We're up and running. Fright Nights and Monster Girls. We're up and running. But yeah, like I am definitely of the opinion Stephen Moffat is a better writer than a showrunner. Because he's not as good, in my opinion, as building up the plot and the expectation. You said like I will agree with one thing about Russell T Davies. He is a showman over everything else.
Yeah.
I don't think he's bad at the other stuff at all, but like that is definitely where he shines. Like that's been true of all of his shows. Um and in my opinion, like that's what I enjoy, particularly in something that's not Doctor Who is a very kind of light fiction for him, particularly if you've seen his other stuff, where it's just all about being gay and people around you dying, like that. Whoa. There's some times when I would watch some of his other shows. It would take me a while because I was like, oh god, this is brutal.
Yeah, I
It's
wish
so
he'd bring
raw
some
and
of that energy
brutal.
to Doctor Who.
I
The
I can see why he doesn't because like I think he sees Doctor Who as more of escapism. It will still creep in. Like if you, for example, change any of the female characters that his doctors got really emotionally attached to into a guy, and you start noticing it. You're like, oh, this is the same stuff he was doing in like Queer as Folk and stuff. It's the exact same stuff. It's just that the it's been made heterosexual.
Yeah,
You know,
he definitely sees the Doctor as not he sees him as a superhuman rather than what he is, in my view, anyway, which is a below average alien.
well, I always saw the Doctor as a trickster.
That's a good description.
Like he's always been a trickster. It's been the consistent thing about his character. What is there a dog here? There's a dog here. Hey, doggy. Um, it's the thing about him that's been consistent throughout all his incarnations. Um, And so he simultaneously, like a good trickster, he is simultaneously the least powerful and the most powerful. He is both of those things. That's the nature of the trickster. Um anyway. One of the so what else is on your mind? You were telling me that you've been visiting Bangkok over the last
Yeah,
several years.
I was in Bangkok in October for about 2 weeks. The Me and Omega were there with my dad, and we were in Bangkok for about a week and a half. We spent the rest of the time in Hua Hin, but went to a lot of temples. Saw a lot of interesting stuff. Got very, very warm. Only got mildly sick. Food poisoning at one point. Um, and we got to see Mantra Warriors: Legend of the Eight Moons, which is a fantastic anime-tinged retelling of the Ramayana, but for
Yeah,
Thai audiences.
yeah, and I was saying that I was wondering if it was based off of the Grant Morrison script because he had written a movie that was intended to be. Um, they even published the storyboards for Image Comics. Published the storyboards for it. Oh no, wait, no, it was Dynamite. Dynamite published the storyboards, and that's the book that I have. And it very much it was a
Mighty.
little more. His, however, was a little bit more Star Wars and a little less Mac.
Yeah, this one's very much giant robots, but all you got the Star Wars stuff, but you've also got giant robots,
Yeah,
which and you could definitely see it as a kaiju type, Evangelion-ish, show.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
yeah. It looks like it. It really looks like it. So
It's
what
I
brought you? What took you out to Bangkok?
Well, for about 20 years, my parents basically would go to Thailand once, sometimes twice a year, because after my dad retired, he'd been a doctor, so they had some money, so they would go out there. They just both fell in love with Thailand. And then my mom died in 2020,
Oh, I'm
not
sorry
of
about that.
COVID, thankfully.
Thankfully, but I'm still sorry.
Yeah, thank you. But my dad then he decided to basically bring family members with him, so he people to go to Thailand with, so he could show off all the sites that he would go with my mom, and just show off all the stuff about the temples that he's visited because he's a massive sort of fan of Thai culture. And so it was finally me and Omega's turn, and so we ended up 2 weeks in Thailand with him, and he wants to bring us back in 2025. Hopefully that will happen. We also had to stay over in Istanbul on the way, but that was like overnight, and there was
Mm.
very little going on in Istanbul airport.
Yeah, I really want. I actually have wanted to get out to Istanbul because I've gotten to know John Evernall, the guy who did the movie Baskin and Housewife and Perry the Girl with No Mouth. Um, and
I've never seen those ones.
oh, 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 they're wonderful. Um, Baskin was I think it was his first feature, and he was like, I want to do Turkish Hellraiser.
Sounds good.
It
It's
it
that's
it
up there
is.
with Pakistani Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Hell's Ground.
Yeah, but the thing about that was so good about Baskin is it's so beautiful. The production is so high quality. It's like one of those. This was made in Turkey. You got to be kidding me. This looks better than a lot of American films.
I color me interested.
Yeah, yeah. It goes there. That was the thing I really appreciated about it. He was like, "Oh no, we're just gonna do this," because there are a lot of scenes where you're like, "We're not gonna watch this happen, are we?" Oh, I guess we are. Yeah, Baskin's great. Especially if you have a really ghoulish sense of humor. You know,
I I haven't got much in the way of Turkish films. I really should try to fix it. I went to a horror convention last year in Rotherham, and
Mm,
ended up buying a handful of Turkish exploitation from the 70s, like their version of The Exorcist and all that, Satan,
right,
stuff like
right.
that, and Karate Girl. Unfortunately, it's the dubbed version, not the one with the amazing, death at the end where the guy's getting shot over and over. They've dubbed it over with and tried to explain it in voiceover. It's terrible. You got literally like the lady when she's shooting him, she's got like she remembers this advice given to her by this guy going like, you have to shoot him many times, and keeps telling her, and that's why she keeps shooting. And it's, you ruined it, dubbing.
Yeah, yeah. Who's Baskin? Oh, Baskin's the title of a movie, brother Johnny.
It's
It's
also an ice cream company.
yeah, but well, it's part of a half of an ice cream company. So apparently
The other is Tim Robbins.
without the Robins, it's basically Turkish Hellraiser, but it's really, 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 really good, and in my opinion, quite sweet and tasty. Um, yeah, he also did this other one named Housewife he had finished by the time I had met him.
Hmm.
Um, it was just coming out, so he was like promoting it. And when the movie finally was released, I was like, all right, I know the cult leader is not me. But the fuck? It's an Asian guy who worships the devil. Like what the wait, what? He's like, actually, that was one of the reasons I was kind of interested to meet you, because I was like, I think I wrote this guy, like
Oh, fantastic.
yeah.
I think I have
It
that beat
was.
though. The
Oh,
Sean Weathers. I don't know if you know his work. He's from, I believe, New York. He does sort of inner city exploitation films. He did a version of Animal Farm, but with prostitutes. But
ooh.
that's called Hookers in Revolt. It's much better than you'd think. He is talented as fuck in some areas, but he one of his films. I, its name escapes me now, and I might remember to have to tweet it out. But it's about this sort of violent criminal dude who's like murdering women and being brutalizing them terribly. But during one of the murders, he's wearing a T-shirt with my face on it. I reviewed one of his films, and he sent me his entire
What?
filmography. He sent me his entire filmography, and I reviewed one of his films, and I've watched all of them. And I chatted to him a couple of times. He threw it in there as a reference to me, and it is great. It's actually, I'm gonna look this up to see if I can find it. Let's show you it.
Well, I found your review
Of Hookers and
of
Revolt.
Hookers in Revolt. I found the review. Wow. So it's basically Animal Farm with hookers.
Yeah, he also did a version, which a remake of I Spit on Your Grave, which was
Mm,
called They Almost Die, and it's just this white lady. She goes into like into the hood to get to learn about stuff, and then she gets raped, and then she murders everyone. It's I Spit on Your Grave. But
right.
one of the really really weird things about it was every time she kills one of the guys, the black guys, they cut to for a frame or two to footage or no, sorry, still image of a lynching victim. And I was like trying to work out what the reasoning for this is, and I chatted with them,
Oh.
and I was like, okay, the only reason I can think of for why this would be in the film is because you were a white supremacist, but I know you're black. So I gotta ask you, why did you do this? And his reply was great. He's just like, I just thought it looked deep.
Oh my god.
But let me see, Virgin. Yeah, it's Virgin Genocide. That's the film.
Oh my god. Well, like,
Is there a photograph of this?
oh my god.
No, there's no
Oh
photograph
no,
of
the
it.
whole movie's on here. Oh no. Wait, no. That's not it. That's not it. It's not. I made an error. a boo boo.
I also get a thank you credit in that one as well.
My God.
I'm gonna review it at some point. I'm gonna commit when I do it. I'm gonna commission a photograph, a t-shirt with his face on it, and wear it the entire review. It's gonna be great.
Well, like, okay, here's the thing about that. Whether he intended to or not, actually using like lynching imagery in America.
Yeah.
In America, like that says something very pointed because many black men were murdered, were lynched over false rape accusations.
Yep.
And that kind of does create another spin on it.
Yeah, that's why the only logical reason I could think of for why you do that in that film in that context was, if they were if the filmmaker was a white supremacist, because they're trying to say like these lynching guys, they deserved it too, that kind of thing.
Right.
But also he's black. So, but yeah, I
So
don't think
yeah. So you're like, well, it's possible that you're a black white supremacist, but like
I don't think
that's
so.
not that. I don't want.
Well,
I don't just want to throw that around, because that's not necessarily like
he's
like an easy conclusion to come to. Like you kind of got to twist your brain a bit.
well with Sean, he's a consummate exploitation filmmaker. Like he made a movie called Mandingo Sex Addict. He uh he made a movie about inspired by the called Bill Huxtable, serial rapist, something like that.
Bill
And
Huxtable serial. Oh.
yes, it's something like that. Let me see. And this was made before Bill Cosby was jailed, and it's the credit, the tagline at the start, says inspired by the thing allegations. Is it called Bill Huxtable? It's called Bill Huxtable something. I'm gonna look this up. So he's a consummate exploitation director. So he just really, he embraces it fully with all the negatives and mostly
Yeah.
negatives of
Oh, by the way, Chrome Bison, the name of the movie was Mantra Warrior.
The Legend of the Eight Moons.
Yeah, Mantra Warrior, the Legend of the Eight Moons, because apparently they're going to be making a bunch of these.
They're already working on the sequel, The Bridge to Lanka.
Oh,
I'm wondering how they're going to handle that and think, because, the Bridge to Lanka is Adam's bridge, between Sri Lanka and India. So are they going to have a bridge in space?
Probably.
It's going to look interesting, if nothing else.
Or it's going to be like one of those, like a teleportation gate between two worlds or something.
Like Space Bridge from Transformers?
Yeah, like the Space Bridge,
Oh, I was right. It is Bill Huxtable, serial rapist.
Okay. Yeah, you're right, Brother Johnny. Black white supremacist apologists do exist, but like we're going to, this is where art gets weird, because you never can quite tell. Sometimes you really can't quite tell, because there is something to be said for the absolute shock value of doing something like that. But at the same time, you've got like this, until you really like become familiar with the artist, it's hard to tell. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't. And that's a big issue. Like, they're not all like Mel Gibson, who keeps letting you know.
And like, well, my very light version of this is that my screen persona is quite extreme, and in real life, and even my persona on Twitter is similarly quite extreme, but in person I'm not like that. So a lot of people, I've been told a bunch of times, like conventions for people who'd seen my videos and stuff, that I'm not like they expected.
Yeah, I think that was, I always felt was kind of weird, because the people who acted very similarly on screen as they did in person. This is actually something me and Lewis bonded over. Like, we were the ones who were closest to the people on the screen,
Mhm.
because it's like, no, that is our attitude. That is our way of speaking. The only major difference between Linkar from atop the fourth wall and Lewis is that Lewis does in fact curse like a sailor.
That's true.
Like when he's in private, he swears as casually as everybody. But other than that, no, that's pretty much who you will meet in person when you meet him. And the major difference between me and Count Jackula is I don't actually believe I'm a vampire from outer space for the most part.
Film Brain and Ashens are very
Film
much
Brain,
like that
yeah,
too.
there's another one. He was pretty much what was on the tin.
Yeah. Just saw him about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, how's he doing?
Oh, doing fine. He came out to Ireland for the first time, so we hung out in Belfast for a few days, and we met up with Ryan Hollinger, who's a Northern Irish horror YouTuber. So we had a mini sort of reviewer get together.
Oh man, that's nice. Yeah, I really liked Film Brain. I always got along with Brian.
Yeah, lovely guy.
Yeah, or Buck. Wait, but
Matty Buck.
Matthew. Yeah, sorry, God. Known him as Film Brain for so long, it's hard for me to remember his actual first name. By the way, is your legal first name Diamanda?
No, but I have I go by various different names. I just prefer to go by Diamanda online.
Right. I'm the same way. I have a birth name, a legal name, and the name everyone calls me.
Yeah.
They're all different.
Yeah, it's fun to have just
yes. Yeah.
Almost like you play a little bit of a role.
Yeah, well, the thing I kind of like about it is I get to feel like, like a shady gangster or smuggler in a movie, like yeah, because because I'm like not only biracial but like bicultural. You occupy I when you're in that space, you occupy this very, very, very weird, culturally liminal area where you're involved in both, but not in a commonly acceptable way. You're never going to be put up as a paragon of either. Like that's just not going to happen. But
yeah,
where you do find a lot of commonality is in the underground elements, whether that be music and culture or legally or, the legal underground. You find a lot of commonality with that because a lot of, particularly in Asia, a lot of crime is based around smuggling. It's based around smuggling, and it's smuggling over borders. And so you got the China Sea and all the piracy and smuggling that happens around there. So
well,
you're
in the
somewhat
UK, you've got the Pirates of Penzance and their musicals.
But yeah, but it's also something that like a lot of Irish people who live in Britain also experience. Well, I mean, wait, which one's the country? Country's England, right? Or is that the island?
United Kingdom has 5 countries in it.
Right.
You've got 4 countries in it. You've got Northern Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales. You've got England, Scotland, and Wales are the island of Great Britain, and then you've got the island of Ireland, which contains Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland.
Right.
So it is a bit complicated if you're not involved. Like
Yeah.
I get some of what you're saying about the liminal spaces thing. When I worked this out a few years ago, basically I don't sound Northern Irish. Pretty obvious for anyone who listens to me. I don't sound like Liam Neeson or any of the ones from Derry Girls. Like Derry Girls, if you've seen that,
I have.
That's my hometown, and that they
Oh,
are
really?
from the. Yeah, and
Oh, okay.
that's the time I would have been their age at the time when that was set. So they use a lot of the slang of my childhood, but I don't sound anything like that, obviously. But uh, and I
Right.
finally
And
realized
you are in Northern Ireland, right?
I'm currently in the Republic of
You're
Ireland.
currently in the
I
Republic of Ireland.
Yeah,
What's the major difference? Because I know there is one, but I keep forgetting which one's which.
well, the Republic's the larger one. It's three-quarters of the island.
Okay.
It's the the bigger one. Northern Ireland's the smaller, sort of the north east of the island, and it's not the Republic is not part of the UK. Well, Northern Ireland is, although like half of Northern
Oh.
Ireland wants to be part of the Republic, the other half want to be in the United Kingdom. It'll probably change at some point. Who knows?
Oh, okay. So Ireland is part of the EU, but not the UK.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So so the area of Northern Ireland, that would have been where the majority of the stuff with like the IRA and all that happened.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. It
That's
was
that's
that
all
was
Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland is more Catholic.
Northern Ireland's about it's it's been part and part, and it's getting more Catholic. But basically, because my parents moved into Northern Ireland before I
Right.
was born, they moved in from Scotland, and and they were neither of them were Christian, like not Protestant, not Catholic, not none of
Oh,
that.
okay.
And so I have no connection with Northern Ireland ancestrally, and no connection with the biggest thing, biggest issue of Northern Ireland when I was young, which is Christianity. So
Oh, okay.
I don't sound like I'm Northern Irish. So the disconnect of feeling, not feeling like you connect, I've had that my entire life in a slightly different form. And I finally realized that whenever Omega moved over to Northern Ireland, and basically we were both getting treated like American tourists. And I realized through how Omega was getting treated, that's how I've been treated my entire life. Like I'm a tourist.
Yeah, yeah, like you're an outsider. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yup.
So, so it's, culturally liminal. It's a good
Yeah,
description.
yeah, culturally liminal. But physically, you currently live in Northern Ireland.
No, no, I live in the Republic of
No, you live in
Ireland.
the Republic of Ireland. Okay,
I was born and raised in the Northern
yeah, and
Ireland.
that one is currently the more liberal of the two.
Right now, Ireland, the Republic of Ireland's more liberal, but Northern Ireland is it's rather odd. Northern Ireland is traditionally very more conservative, especially in the Protestant areas.
Right.
It's like a cross between Massachusetts and Alabama. But
Okay. Okay.
thanks
Yeah.
but thanks to basically the peace process in the wake of the terrorism,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of very strict rules were brought into Northern Ireland, which mean that basically, as the rest of the UK is getting more and more politically shit, Northern Ireland is getting better because you literally cannot do some of the shit that they're inflicting on the rest of the UK. It's just
Oh.
so Northern Ireland, paradoxically, is eventually going to be the nicest part of the UK. Probably. We'll see.
Oh, that's it. Oh, that's odd. Yeah, like that's odd. That's a change from even like 12 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. The
That is interesting. I do God, I that was one of my big like worries with Brexit, like I'm old enough to that I was like still a young teenager when the terrorism in Ireland was happening. And
mhm.
so when it was like, okay, well we're just going to be all part of the EU now, and everything kind of on that front kind of chilled out. Everything kind of chilled out. I was like, "Oh, well that's okay, that's cool. That's interesting. I wasn't expecting that, but like sure, like peace, I'll take it where I can get it."
Yeah.
Um so when Brexit happened, I was like, "Oh no."
You're that's very prescient because uh basically Northern Ireland cannot hard Brexit in the way the rest of the UK did because our the peace process relies on the EU. So they've had to create this internal border with the rest of the UK, and there is there was no way to have Brexit and the peace process and keep the same connections that you usually have with Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. So the hilarious thing was the Unionists in Northern Ireland, they voted for Brexit. They were very for Brexit. They wanted to be like the rest of the UK and separate out from Europe and get away from Ireland, not realizing that the rest of the UK would just separate off from them because they're like, we don't want terrorism back. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like I can totally see that.
So Northern Ireland practically is a lot more like an EU member than the rest of the UK, though technically it's not. It's
And this is the Republic of Ireland.
Oh well, the Republic is in the EU. Northern Ireland is not.
Okay. Northern Ireland is not technically a member of the EU, but it's also not
It,
technically part of
it's
Britain. It's part of the United Kingdom.
Yes, because Britain is just a geographical term.
Okay.
Although British is used because it sounds better than UKism or something like that.
Right. But like
Yeah,
you wouldn't if you ran into someone from Scotland, you would consider them Scottish, not British.
It depends. Like my ancestry is Scottish, and I'm perfectly fine with calling Scottish people British. A lot of Scottish people are not. A lot of but my point is that the term British should not be given to the English.
Okay.
England,
okay. That's what I was curious about.
Like we don't know where the word Britain comes from. It comes, well, we know kind of. It comes from an ancient Celtic people called the Bretoniki that Pythias, this ancient Greek, contacted when he went on a big voyage of discovery in like 300 BC. But I don't like the idea of just handing that over to the English. The English are the worst country in the UK. The English could have fixed so many things, instead of Brexit, if they just left the UK, would have had so many less problems. So I don't think they should be given the term British. It's not fair on the term.
Right.
But a lot of people, that's not exactly a common viewpoint.
Gotcha. Like, oh man. Funny enough, I do know where England comes from.
Oh, the Angles.
The Angles, yeah, and why they were called that, and why it is called England.
If I remember correctly, it's because the Angles were the largest group of the southern Norse who went over with the Saxons and the Jutes.
Yep.
And they were called, the Angle term comes from because someone decided they were very attractive and declared they looked a bit like angels, but that might be apocryphal.
No, that's apocryphal. Here's what it actually is. So the Norse god Frey, right?
Oh yeah.
His name in the region where the Angles come from is Ang.
So they come from Frey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they come from Frey. And when they got to the British Isles, they declared it Angsland. Because that was their guy. And
that's interesting.
my theory is that part of my theory is that at some time, Aang and the Green Man, Jack and the Green, that whole thing, were synonymous. Like they were the same thing, because in all of those areas you find the Green Man in all those areas between the Nordic areas and England, where the Angles settled.
He predates them too, though. So
no, totally.
Join with pre-existing
stuff. The figure, the god itself predates them, but there's this kind of explanation for why, like, it feels like he is the Green Man is like an entity that lost its name.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're like, they had to have an actual name for this guy. He's too consistent.
There's an episode of Time Team, which was a 1990s archaeology show on British TV. They would go. There was a lot of episodes. They would go to a place and just spend 3 days archaeologizing it. I got Omega into it, and it's a lot less showy than you'd expect from that kind of description. But one of the episodes, they actually discovered only the second example of this particular Green Man, Brito-Roman god from like the 2nd century. So they found only the second reference in the entire history, to him. And so, that could line up with what you're saying.
Yeah.
This character.
Another weird thing about the Norse is that this one blew my mind. Okay, so you know how in the Norse mythology, you have the after a certain point you have the Vanir and the Aesir.
Yeah.
You know, and they war, and then kind of Odin they make peace, and then Odin's kind of like the head motherfucker in charge. Okay, so I've already made my case that basically Santa Claus is based on Odin. Based on a very particular depiction of Odin as it relates to winter festivals.
That's not the first time I've heard that theory. That seems to be a pretty well substantiated theory.
It's it's way more substantiated than Saint Nicholas. However, if you go back even further, someone was like, wait a minute, we're finding all of this really old Nordic stuff in Asia. Like thoroughly in Asia. Like not like, oh yeah, on the border over there. We're talking like really in the middle of it.
When from?
From like I can't pinpoint it, but like within like the a couple thousand years. Several hundred to 1,000 or so years.
Oh, so this is okay. So it's probably not merchants. Might be Indo-European sort of like ancient sort of stuff like that.
Kind of.
Okay.
Here's what they discovered it was. At one point, and this is before, this is obviously before like Genghis Khan. But the people from the North Asian steppe actually made it into like green, into that area because the whole thing was frozen over. And even at that time, they were known for being horse riders,
Yeah, there's a lot of I can totally see that. I had never heard of that, but I could totally see that. Ancient peoples moved around a lot more than a lot of people assume.
Oh yeah, there's no such thing as like, how to put it, there has never ever been such thing as an ethno-state. It does not exist. Yeah. It cannot exist.
It cannot exist. Yes, very true.
So basically, these people from the steppes, the proto-Mongols, had come over to the north and brought the technology of horse riding. And what is Odin? What does Odin have? He has this huge 8-legged horse.
Sleipnir.
And he's got Sleipnir. And there is this other guy. One of the other things that the Mongols had at the time were thunder gods.
To be fair,
now that's very common. That's very common.
I can see one problem with the Odin connection you're making.
Yeah.
And that is that Odin was not always the king of the gods in Viking mythology.
No, he was not.
He was, him and... fun fact for the audience, it's theorized... Okay, the original head of the gods was Tyr, and he was an honorable war god. And then at some point, around the time the Vikings stopped being honorable... I keep looking at the mic as though the audience is there. No, you're over there. At some point when the Vikings started raiding hardcore and stopped being honorable warriors, then Odin took over, and it's theorized that him and Loki were the same person originally in the mythology, because Loki just appears out of nowhere. Even in the myth, he comes from Laufey, who was a man in the MCU, but is a woman in the God of War. But there's some translations of Laufey suggest that the meaning is lightning on leaves, like fire, so. Loki, it's unusual myth. Loki has no similar things in any nearby myths. We don't know where he comes from.
Yeah, well, here's the other connect. So basically, it was. It was the North was not always the Norse were not always like Odin is the top guy and stuff. Like there is definitely a point, and so but what they theorize, what is theorized, is that the Vanir were more or less the local gods. Those were the local
Ah,
guys.
and
Whereas
the
the
Aesir were the other ones.
Aesir come from the east because Aesir means people from the east.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
look up
yeah.
on this.
And then you
That's
think
interesting. I
about
like
the
that theory.
major, and when you think about some of the major gods that start appearing after that period of time, you start realizing a few things. Linguistically, Wotan,
Hmm.
Loki, these are Asian sounds. These are
Although
sounds
to
from
be
Asian
fair,
languages.
to be completely fair, the a few years ago saw some videos on an Icelandic person basically on the original pronunciation of the gods' names, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it was things like Thor was Tor, Odin was Odin, and Loki was Loki.
Loki,
So
yeah.
not quite the
Not
same, but
quite,
yeah,
no,
I
not
could see
quite the
it.
same, but there's a relationship. Like,
It's some wonderful Crusader Kings 3 shit,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I've several times created the Viking Mongols and the Kraken horde, who go across on the ships and start conquering, stuff with their horses. It is fantastic fun. It is the sort of thing that it's exactly the sort of madness that could well have happened.
Yeah, and like the other thing, the genealogical thing that helps support this is that there are
Hmm.
a lot of people in between that area between like the steppe and Norway are epicanthic folds.
Interesting.
They yeah, like they develop epicanthic folds which first appear in the steppe because the advantage that it gives you is it cuts down on sun glare off from below because you have this slight shadow over your eye because of the epicanthic fold. And they're thinking, oh yeah, at one point these two probably actually had quite a lot to do with each other, these two cultures, and it would
Well,
make
the
sense that it would eventually merge and then kind of get slightly cut off because of a rising sea level, not not
I mean,
not not like global warming sea level rise, but like just part of what would have been just the natural ebb and flow of the landmass.
I've definitely read more unlikely sounding stuff than that. Have you ever heard of Geirmundur Heljarskin?
No.
Okay. Geirmundur Heljarskin's dad was a petty king in Norway in like the 8th century, 9th century.
Okay.
He basically the equivalent of a duke. And
Mm-hmm.
his dad lost his lands to Harald Fairhair, the first king of unified Norway. Now,
Oh, uh-oh. Hang
Geirmurskin
on, we're having issues.
means.
All right,
Oh,
go back a little bit, you're back.
okay.
Audio cut out there for a bit.
Oh, sorry.
You had just gotten on,
Okay,
you
sorry.
just said fair hair.
Okay. Harold Fairhair had took his dad's lands, so he had to go off and do something else. But his name was Geirmundur Helgerskin. Helgerskin was his nickname, which means hellskin. Hell, as in the goddess of death, who had
Death.
black skin. And his mother was either Siberian or Mongolian. That are the two theories. The story involving him, the saga, involves him being born with dark skin thanks to his mother. And
Yeah,
it is theorized
and a
that
lot of the
Siberian or Mongolian.
Mongolians were actually quite dark-skinned. Like
So
you can actually still find those people today. Like the really, really, really the people who like still kind of like live in villages in like the Okinawa area,
mhm.
very dark. Like so dark that as an American, you would be like, is that guy black? Oh no, wait, no, he looks Asian, but he's really dark.
Is this the Anu, or is this or have we misunderstood?
I don't know if it's the Anu, but it is a thing in Asia. Like when you get around a certain area around the islands, people are very dark skinned, like darker than a lot of than a lot of Black Americans.
Hmm.
And it sometimes trips people up. I know it tripped me out as a kid because I was like, wait, there are black people here? Like because I was 8 and I was like, oh, I thought only Asian people lived here. It's like, no, they are Asian. They just have really dark skin, you
Yeah,
know.
the like there were they're definitely brown Vikings, apart from Geirmundr.
Yeah,
There was the
yeah.
Blumen of Dublin. The Vikings would call people who were black or brown, blue, and so the Blumen of Dublin were a famous war band. But the to go away from Vikings for a little bit, I
Hmm.
want to give you a mythological historical quiz. Where does the word Scotland come from?
Ooh,
Now, you're going to get extra points for going into for not going for the obvious.
right. Um, fuck. No, no, you got me. You got me. I actually don't know.
Okay, well,
I would
they were
have.
named after it was named after the Scots, who were a group, but the Scots were an Irish tribe who conquered the Picts and renamed the country, basically wiped out the Picts culturally. They replaced the language. This is why Scots Gaelic is related to Irish rather
Oh,
than Welsh. The Picts, poor Picts, they fought off the Romans. They were all sorts of badasses and stuff like that. Then they had to take on the Anglo-Saxons, the Scots, and the Vikings at once. And they almost won, but they were subjugated by the Scots. And that's where Scotland come from. But the Irish, the Scots tribe in Ireland, they got the name from their mythological founder, who was Princess Scotia of ancient Egypt. According to their mythical founding
what?
that she and her husband, who was either Dacian or possibly from Troy, depending on the retelling, she came to Ireland and the wedding present for the Irish chieftain was this big stone, which was the stone from the Bible that one of the saints used to sleep used as a pillow. And according to the myth, that became the stone of Scone. It's obvious the stone of Scone has been tested. It's not from the Middle East. It's all bollocks. But
But
having
that was the tale, and that tale comes
yes,
from something.
it comes from, I imagine, the tendency of people from the north, because the north in mythological ancient times was basically the poor cousin. It was shit. And so they would look south for civilization, for technology, for greatness. Like the guy who first wrote down all the Viking tales, Snorri, what do you call him?
The monk,
He
the Catholic monk,
I
or
can't
do
remember
you
if he was
mean
a monk.
was he a Catholic? Are you talking about Catholic monk? Or are you talking about someone who actually did it and like the
Snorri
runes and
Sturluson.
stuff?
Snorri Sturluson. I don't think he was a monk, but he was a Christian.
Okay.
He wrote down the present versions of the myths, in the early Christian days of the Vikings.
Oh, okay,
But he
okay.
also wrote a separate thing where he explained where he thought they came from. And he thought that these guys the Viking gods had been inspired by guys from the south, Romans or people from Troy who had escaped north. And basically they brought technology and civilization, and so the locals took them as gods. And it was some Stargate shit. And so that's what he thought it came from.
Ah.
And considering what happened with ancient Egypt and the Scots, it's very possible.
Well, yeah,
People,
I mean, like, even if you want to go uh much more recent, which wouldn't make a lot of sense, but like, just as an example of how possible that is, like, the Romans would have brought a lot of Egyptian influence with them just from reaching that far west.
yeah, but the Romans didn't have any impact in Ireland.
No, no, no. But I'm just saying, it's like if there's one way for it to get there, there's another.
Oh yeah, they would have heard about these kinds, these far off places, and basically you want to emulate the cool guys, who are spectacular. Like the ancient Greeks, they looked east
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
same reason, like to Persia, to India, to these older
Oh,
civil, down south to Egypt.
yeah.
It's
So much so, and I love bringing this up. I love bringing this up. So much so that priests from those regions, from Phoenicia, from Persia, from like any of the places where essentially Zoroastrianism had taken hold,
mhm.
we use the word for them today: mages.
Oh,
Magic.
Magus,
The
yes.
magus. Yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, the word magic comes from magika techne, which was the word that they used to describe the arts of the Zoroastrian priests.
No, I can see that. Yeah, that is a nifty little fact. I love
Yeah.
how, words, they flow and they continue on. Like the great example of the sheer bizarreness of word descent works, that
Oh,
the
yeah.
same word gave birth, through several generations to faggot, fajita, and fascist.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yes. All because of flame, you
yeah.
know?
The
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. It's really language is so interesting. Like,
like the oh, but you mentioned the Zoroastrian. I got to bring this up too, just because this is fun. Okay, have you ever heard of Gemistus plethon?
that sounds familiar, but I'm not sure about it. It's like that sounds like something I know in passing, but not intimately.
He's a guy. He's a philosopher in late stage Byzantium. He dies about 20 years before the fall of Constantinople, but he was incredibly sort of well regarded in the Christian world as a philosopher and stuff like that. Like his greatest claims to fame were he was involved in high level efforts to reunify the Orthodox and Catholic churches. He was over in Italy where he personally suggested to like this rich guy from one of the cities that he open a school to try and recreate the teachings of Aristotle. He also re-imported, the ancient Greek philosopher stuff into Europe. Those are his great things that he was known for. After he died,
It's
it was
his fault.
discovered.
No.
After he died, sorry, him doing all that is thought to have been one of the main reasons the Renaissance happened. So,
Oh.
interesting guy. But after he died, it was discovered the guy was a pagan. The guy
Yeah.
was a Hellenistic pagan. He wrote his own version, basically codifying the Hellenistic things, taking inspiration from Zoroastrianism. He wrote extensively on how Christianity and Islam both need to fail and how the Greeks need to return to the gods and stuff like that. And we only know this because the only copy of his book was taken to the Basileus in Byzantium, and they were like, oh shit, this is embarrassing, and they burned it, but they wrote about like a few pages describing what's in it just so they can go, look at this fucking guy, what the fuck.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Although,
I oh man, like of one of the things about the Renaissance,
mm-hmm.
that I love to point out. I love to point this out, which is okay. So every newbie philosopher has got a hard on for Plato.
Oh, fucking, I hate that guy.
No, I hate that guy. I hate Plato too. Like, he's just a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
I I'm one of those guys where I would constantly get into arguments about Plato, and then I would do the have you even read the Republic? And they're like, well, no, not all of it. And I'm like, then I can't be having this conversation with you because you have no idea what you're talking about. No, Plato he really did take like the idea of the Platonic ideal and he applied it. He tried to apply it to culture and society. That's what the Republic is. That's what the Plato's Republic is. And when you read the template of this perfectly just society that he creates, you're like, this is fascism.
Yeah.
This is absolutely fascism.
Yeah.
It's fascism, and it even has within it the mechanism to lie to people in order to get them to believe it.
That, but I'm not familiar with. But yeah, it is fascism, and it is extremely fucked up. The guy was just a meathead who wrote a lot about Socrates and got his name big because of it. Hate that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. he was not as fucking clever as a lot of people thought. And in fact, he was not even. Man, there were a lot of contemporary philosophers that absolutely fucking disagreed with him. But the only reason he gained prominence is because it was his writings that were discovered that predated the Hermetic corpus. And that is why. That is why. Was he an important philosopher of his day or influential? Yes, he was. But the reason he comes to dominate Western civilization is because right around the cusp of the Renaissance, there was this big argument over which was better, the Hermetic corpus or some of the other Greek philosophers. And somebody discovered that Plato predated the books of the Hermetic corpus, and so they went with that. I know, right? I don't think the Hermetic corpus would have done any better for women's rights, but like it wouldn't have been some of this other shit that goes on.
If only they'd based it on Diogenes. That would have been funny.
Diogenes, well,
would have been funny
that's
at least.
That's the world of the comedian. Yeah. That's the world of the cultural comedian. You know, that's your Patton Oswalds, your Bill Hicks, those guys. Those are the inheritors of the philosophy of Diogenes.
Yeah, you can see you can totally see the
George Carlin, definitely.
Like ancient Greece did have stand-up philosophers.
Yes.
Like stand-up comics. He would do like bits and stuff like that. You could totally see.
Yeah, Mel Brooks didn't just pull that out of his ass.
Yeah, you can totally see a through line there.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like, yeah, these ideas, some of these ideas, they do follow us. But fucking Plato. Yeah, he is the reason. Have you ever read? Yeah, he's the one who created Atlantis.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, he is. And okay.
Did he say that Socrates did, but he wrote it down, or was it one of the things that he said he invented himself? It's hard to tell.
Okay, that I don't quite remember, but he did. Everything we know about Atlantis comes through Plato. And the thing that is so frustrating about that is we know this, and we have known this. Plato made it up. Plato even said it's fictional. Like, he went to great lengths to tell people that this was fictional. Now, it was still his treatise on the moral decay of Greece.
That's because it was a very common thing in the ancient world, basically, to look at the world and society starting off perfect and getting constantly worse.
The idea
that progress would make things better is a very modern one.
Yeah, it's very new. It really is only since like the Renaissance that even started being a thing.
And it didn't even take over completely until well into like the, I'm gonna guess, Victorian era. Like, have you ever read Gulliver's Travels?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In there's a whole section in Gulliver's Travels where he's visiting. In the Ted Danson version, he visits Omar Sharif, who's a historian, and another who uses his blood to basically call forth the ghosts of the past. And in the Ted Danson TV version, which is otherwise excellent, they turn it into a little horror thing. Like, it's just a horror story, like a bit of necromancy. But the point of it in the book is to demonstrate, is for Gulliver to bring forward modern famous great men and ancient great men, and he compares them, and he discovers that progress is bollocks, and all the ancient people were much better. And so Jonathan Swift was fully into the idea that the much older idea that shit doesn't get better.
Yeah, he was a fantastic cynic. He was super cynical. I mean, like, he was the same guy who did Modest Proposal, isn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah.
And he was let's just say he was very Irish about the whole thing.
Oh yes.
The flying island of Laputa, also from Gulliver's Travels, where the island is flying around over countries, and it's sort of like basically taking food from them to support itself, and if and
Mm-hmm.
dropping heavy things. That was a direct parody of Britain and Ireland.
Yeah, it's super clear. It's super clear when you read it. You're like, oh, when you realize Jonathan Swift was Irish, you just sort of like, oh yeah, the
Yep.
island that floats in the sky, and oh yeah, this is England. Like this is.
And I had a wonderful exchange on Twitter once. Someone was using Gulliver's Travels, basically being like, as an example of the travelogue of the white person going around and visiting like the lesser races, like the very racist like narrative. And I had to
Yeah.
point out to them that the point of Gulliver's Travels is this white English guy goes around, and every single place he goes completely fucks over one of his preconceptions. And by the end, he just hates everything, including his own family.
Yeah.
Because the last island is the island of technically Japan's the last place he visits, but the island of the Houyhnhnms. There's this race of like super intelligent horses, and there are feral humans living on the island some people had washed up hundreds of years earlier, and they bred, and they had incest kids who bred and bred and bred, and they devolved Planet of the Apes style. And so Gulliver comes to the conclusion that humans are these yahoos, the origin of the word Yahoo. And by the end, yeah.
I didn't
And
realize
so
he had originated it.
he then, when he goes home, he buys some horses, and he spends all his time with the horses, conversing with them in Houyhnhnm, because they are noble, far better race, people than humans, and he hates his family because they are nothing but yahoos, and he hates himself. It's a very dark story.
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember they did. Oh God, there was a great bit in what was it? The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where Gulliver runs into John Carter.
Oh, that's gonna go well.
It kind of doesn't. Like Gulliver finds like John Carter to be insufferable. Yeah. And I'm like, well, fucking of course, like, of course he would. It's like, what about slavery there? Fucking John, how about that? Like, look, I'm just an adventurer, and and I'm just a journalist. Yeah, why don't you just keep going there, Bucky boy? Of course, he says it like much more like genteelly because he's Gulliver, but like, it's one of the things I loved about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and how it's this big critique of British literature going back from the early Victorian age to the modern day.
The only main complaint I've got with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen on this one is it might seem minor to everyone else, but Alan Moore completely fucks up the characterization of Adam Adamant in the 1960s one. He's got Adam Adamant trying to seduce everyone, and I was like, that's not Adam Adamant. That's very not Adam. That's not even a parody of Adam Adamant. There's no way he would seduce anyone. It's like you were a bit of a hack on that moment, Moore.
Like it's more like everyone kind of wants to have sex with him.
Yeah,
it's just a little different.
And he doesn't want to. Yeah, that would work far better. But how turning him into a sort of a playboy figure, it's not even a parody. It's just wrong for the character.
Well, it felt like it was a combination between Adam Adamant and the Cornelius brothers.
Or Jason King, or any of the 1960s Playboy type things. But the point of Adam Adamant was he was Edwardian, and he was like Worf for Edwardian Britain. He was.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
I have this theory that Adam Adamant is biracial. I have a theory that his mother was from India.
That actually would not be. Yeah, there'd be a lot of precedent for that, actually. Because there are a lot of characters from Western literature that people don't realize were intended to not be white.
Well, with Adam, he's definitely intended to be white, but you can read into it very easily that he's not. because he has slightly dark skin because they darkened his skin with makeup. I imagine to get a heroic bronze look on him,
Mm.
but that's one little fact. The other one, I did a whole video on Adam Adamant why I think he's mixed race, but uh, basically to explain his character, because the guy is, like Worf embraced all of the Klingon myths, and so he avoided all of the double dealing and all of the inconsistencies and stuff. So he became like a storybook Klingon warrior.
Yeah, yeah.
Adam Adamant's very much like that, but about Victorian values and heroism. He doesn't do any of the shit that they're not
Ah.
proud of. He's just heroic, honorable. He's all these things. He's not racist. He doesn't do any of the bad stuff. So I get the feeling that his dad was a noble, was in India,
Right.
had like an illicit relationship, and he was raised on stories of like knights
Of
and
the yeah,
heroic people
of
in
the
Britain.
Brits. Yeah.
And yes, he finally made it his way back, and he created a life for himself. And there is historical precedence for this. The third officer on the Franklin expedition was a guy called James Fitzjames, and it was discovered by a biographer like 150 years after the expedition vanished. This guy, who was a young hotshot, everyone loved him, that he was a noble bastard who had created a myth that which basically wiped out his ancestry. And the guy who wrote the book which discovered all this. He theorized that his mother was either Portuguese or Brazilian, and this was integrated into the Terror
Mm.
TV show on AMC.
Oh,
They
okay.
integrated it,
So it's like
but
so you would consider like Adam Adamant to be like in many ways like a fictional British version of like Alexander Dumas,
you could, yeah,
you
you
know?
could definitely view it that
Yeah,
way.
because I always thought that was fascinating that Dumas was black, because or we would have considered him black in the modern day,
Yeah,
because wait, like he's the most Frenchy poo writer. He's one of the most Frenchy poo writers, and he's not very cynical. He's
yeah,
not very cynical. He's not like Victor Hugo, but it was like this is what I think is the best of being French, of coming
yeah.
from a French ancestry, but
You
he was from the Caribbean.
his dad was Thomas Alexander Dumas, who was Napoleon's arch enemy. They
Yeah.
hated each other, and the ironic thing is, Napoleon wasn't French. Napoleon being Corsican.
Oh,
Corsica
I
was
didn't know that. I didn't know Napoleon wasn't French.
Cors he technically was a French citizen after the Republic, but here after the Republic was formed. But Corsica was Italian until like a couple of years before he was born. He came from a Corsican separatist family who
Oh.
were pissed off and wanted to get rid of the French. Napoleon's sort of hero was this guy, Corsican nationalist, who was against France. Napoleon, or sort of Napoleon Bonaparte, had a thick Italian accent. He just threw his lot in with France. He was mocked by French ones for his ancestry and his accent when he was at
Oh, that's
school.
why we always give him this weird accent that's not quite French.
And this is why, and
Oh.
it wasn't until like his 20s or 30s when he actually embraced France. The dude was basically the French equivalent of Puerto Rican.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's fucking fascinating. That's fucking fascinating.
Yeah, history is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Oh, that is cool. That
But
is super cool.
but the to go back to the James Fitzjames thing,
Yeah.
it was discovered. The terror references the possibility of having a Brazilian or Portuguese mother. Now, the second edition of the book, the author basically decides that I've worked out his mother was probably English. So that's not a thing, but you could definitely see similarities with Adam Adamant doing a similar kind of story. He even has a similar jokey name, James Fitzjames. Fitz means son of.
Son of.
So
Yeah.
James, son of.
Yeah.
His dad was James Gambier, who was a noble. So Adam Adamant, you could also see there's all sorts of wonderful parallels. So if they ever make a remake of Adam Adamant, make him biracial, make it something, cast some, but don't make him visibly biracial. Make it a reveal partway through to give him depth to the character.
Yeah. Do that sort of thing where you've cast a biracial person and then later on you point it out and be like,
Yeah,
oh, I didn't
yeah,
even think about that. You know?
yeah. Like Ben Kingsley is half white, half Indian.
Yes.
Get some. Ben Kingsley. No one looks at Ben Kingsley and assumes he's biracial. Most people look at him and maybe they think he's white with a tan.
Yeah.
Cast someone like that and then
Yeah.
reveal it and
Yeah.
shock it. It'd be a great twist. This
Yeah. I
exemplar of
actually,
Victorian thing.
yeah, an example. It's a French example, not a British one.
Uh-huh.
But I actually really liked it when the Netflix show made Arsène Lupin black.
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty cool because I was like, oh yeah, like that really does work, doesn't it?
I
Having
have
the
not seen that, so
oh, but
I'm
you're
interested to hear.
but are you familiar with the Arsène Lupin?
The Lupin the Third, or is this the military
It's
character?
it's the character that Lupin the Third is inspired by.
Okay, so
He's a
he's a
French
detective.
gentleman thief.
Okay,
He's a
who's the
gentleman thief.
detective?
Um,
Auguste Dupin. That's who I'm
Vegas.
thinking of.
Either that or Veden.
And Auguste Dupin, Poe's French detective as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. But if you're talking about like a French detective was written by a person in France, that would be Veden.
Okay,
Uh, or is it Veden or Vidocq?
Vidocq. I think
Vidocq.
that's it.
Yeah, Vidocq. Who was very much like French Sherlock Holmes, but there were two differences. One,
Wasn't he real?
Vidocq was based on a real guy. Yeah,
Yes,
he
that
was
was
based on a real guy, but the stories that we have are all fictional.
the guy who was based on turned up in Assassin's Creed Unity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically, it's kind of like this is an American thing, but like it's like the Lone Ranger. It's like the Lone Ranger was a real guy.
Hmm.
But the stories we know of the Lone Ranger are all fictional. He was a real guy who was mythologized and also black dude.
I think I read about that. Well, yeah, isn't it Boss something they're doing? Bass Reeves, is that it?
Something like that. Yeah.
There's a TV show.
Yeah. So
I'm not big into Western stuff, so I don't know much about that.
I, you either got to be American or Italian to be really into westerns.
I can see that.
It's a thing, But what was really so yeah. Arsène Lupin was like the gentleman thief. He was the gentleman thief, and when the Japanese guy who created Lupin wanted to basically do a modern version of that, but of course he would be Japanese because he was Japanese. It would be like if an American had done it, then Lupin would have been an American, And so, but as a reference, Lupin the Third is the grandson of Arsène.
It's like the Pakistani movie where they wanted Hitler, but they to do the crime boss, but they figured that wouldn't really work, so they made it Hitler's son, and it's called Hitler.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. So, because all of the stuff that Lupin the Third is known for is stuff that Arsène Lupin also had a finger in, like womanizer. Considered very charming, very rakish, very good with gadgets.
Mm-hmm.
Like Arsène Lupin had like grappling hooks and like what we would call zip lines these days. Like he did he did Batman shit.
Oh, some Spring Heel Jack shit.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is that going back to Vidocq, he was a lot like Sherlock Holmes, but he got into supernatural adventures as well. So in a weird way, he's more like Batman. But the way that a Vidocq story worked was a little bit different than Sherlock Holmes. Like in Sherlock Holmes, Sherlock Holmes is kind of there the whole time.
Yeah.
Whereas in Vedic, do you know how at the beginning of Hound of the Baskervilles, which was written after the Sherlock Holmes canon, Watson.
Yeah, it's one of the later ones.
Yeah, it's one of the later ones. Watson encounters Sherlock in disguise. He doesn't recognize him at first.
Oh yeah, it's right after Reichenbach Falls, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it is. It's sort of like, oh, Holmes, it's you, like that kind of thing. That's Vedic always. Vedic does not reveal himself until like the last act, but he has always been there. You just didn't know which one he was because he's master disguise. So
that might be why he doesn't turn up in films very much.
Yeah,
that's really hard to translate.
Exactly, because he could be literally anybody until it's like, it turns out it's me, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's Vedic.
You can get a lot of comedic potential out of that in a live action thing. It's like, it's not Vern Troyer, it's Vedic.
Yeah,
who's played by Samuel L. Jackson.
Exactly. Frickin' exactly. And so there are a lot of supernatural stories, which I actually think that the perfect director to do a Vedic story would be Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, I can see that based on your description.
I've seen a lot of Vedic films, and they tend to focus on the supernatural adventures because, like, those are the weirdest. It's like, it turns out this man created the Philosopher's Stone, and therefore, like, Vedic would be a great guy to go up against old Fu Manchu.
Imagine it'd be pretty good at taking on any number of supervillains.
Oh, yeah.
Of various kinds.
Oh, yeah. Like, I know, God, Fu Manchu, even though it's racist as fuck, like, I still love that character. And for some reason, because it's so racist, and people are like, oh my God, it's another white actor playing Fu Manchu. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of works, actually. I'm not saying it's not racist. I'm just saying I'm still tickled pink when it happens. That's when they were like, Ben Kingsley's going to be the Mandarin. I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. That's fucking perfect. Even if he's the fake Mandarin and shit, I was still like, perfect casting.
That was such a good updating of the Mandarin character.
I loved it.
I loved it. It was really, oh well. The one we ended up with Shang-Chi, Tony Leung, I forget his name. He was really good too.
Oh yeah.
And changing Fu Manchu from his dad, Shang-Chi's dad, to the Mandarin, that was pretty clever.
I thought that was a really good idea. I understand a lot of people were mad that they didn't get the Mandarin, but those people are wrong, because I fucking love what they did. Oh my God. Yeah. Sherlock Holmes was in one of the Arsène Lupin books. It's one of the non-canonical adventures because that was written by Maurice LeBlanc. And it was
Herlock Sholmes.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Great.
Yeah, Herlock Sholmes, like, I had to change it because like copyright was becoming a thing, Oh my God. Oh my God. I gotta refill my coffee real quick. I will be
See you soon.
Right back. Yeah, it won't take long like I sometimes do.
So I've been left alone. I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to do, but I'll be entertaining, probably. Here. Check out some of the DVDs I've got that were within arm's reach. Necromentia. It's like the redneck version. What the? You're there. You're not at the mic. Necromentia. The redneck version of Hellraiser. Jerry Anderson, A Life Uncharted, which is, you'd think this is about, interesting little documentary about, the nice puppet man, doing stuff with puppets and just about the puppet shows. It's not. It's really depressing. It's really well made, but it's really sad. The Lord of the Rings 1970s version. The Marvels. Because, of course, I have a copy of The Marvels. I have some other ones there. They're mostly out of reach. You can't see it, but I have a massive pile of DVDs over there, too. Does anyone have any questions for me? Talk about something random. I've recently been listening to The Day of the Triffids, the BBC adaptation, which I believe came out in the 80s. Before that, I listened to the BBC radio version of Neuromancer. I gotta say, hearing William Gibson being done by British actors, putting on American accents, is weird as fuck. But the BBC radio, they also adapted An American Werewolf in London, A Clockwork Orange, Ring, fucking Ring. There's a BBC radio version of Ring, and it stars half the cast of Torchwood. It is very odd. It's also on YouTube. What else? Chrysalids. You can find a lot of these on YouTube. It's pretty fun. Question, but I love your review of Festival of the Damned. Oh, thank you, Zevon Praise. That's very nice to hear. Carrie, I like the Marvels. It was a lot of fun, and the fact that it didn't do well wasn't the fact that it was bad. It was the fact that everyone decided it was bad and no one saw it. It was fantastic.
Yeah,
though.
the only criticism that could really be leveled at the Marvels is it wasn't one of their best movies, but it was still a very, very good one. And I was like, this deserves a lot more love than it's getting.
Yeah, completely. Some stuff was missing. It should have been about 15 minutes longer.
I would have loved. Actually, here's another criticism, but it has nothing to do with what's in the movie. I would have liked to have seen the Captain Marvel movie based off of the flashback that Captain Marvel gives about the planet that's destroyed and that she fails and everything.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that, because that, I'm like, oh, that would have been amazing.
Oh yeah, that would have been a good fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been a good one where it was like, oh no, Captain Marvel fucked up.
Yeah.
But you
the sort of Empire Strikes Back thing.
Yeah, she fucks up, but you get why. It's not like, it's like, oh geez, would I have been any better in that situation? I don't know. You know, like that would have been super compelling. But I did like the Marvels a lot, and I was like, why is this not doing better? Like, this is, you know, like it's. I mean, I liked Love and Thunder, but I thought it was a better story than Love and Thunder.
Yeah, Love and Thunder wasn't. It had a lot of problems.
Yeah, it had a lot of shortcomings. But I will say this: fucking Christian Bale was amazing in that movie.
Christian Bale was great. Unfortunately, they didn't use him very much.
Yeah,
they made a lot of Taika Waititi made a lot of bad decisions in that.
In Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
I feel like he kind of like sat on his laurels a little too much in that one, because there were sections that really worked, and
the more serious sections.
Yeah, some of the more serious sections worked really well, and some of the comedy worked really well, but there is a little bit more of a disconnection between the comedy and the seriousness that Ragnarok did not have. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I felt Ragnarok was like wham, like no, you did it. You did it better than anyone could have expected. You know.
Although, gotta disagree with you on Ragnarok, and I know this is a very unpopular decision. It's a very unpopular position, but I was not a fan of Ragnarok. So
Oh, I loved it.
the so how everyone else feels about Love and Thunder, I already felt about Ragnarok. So then, you get it squared with Love and Thunder.
See, the biggest problem that I had with Love and Thunder is I thought that there was a little too much going on.
Mhm.
Like it all kind of comes together at the end, but not as well as it could have.
Waititi is a very talented uh, visual sort of director, and unfortunately, his first instinct is to do his type of comedy, and if there's no one there basically to stop him from doing it too much, he'll just
Yeah,
run with it as much as he likes,
yeah. Funny
which
enough,
works
a
which
Marv.
works for some stuff. I love What We Do in the Shadows, like for
Yeah,
instance, but and all of his sort of stuff like that. But with the Thor things, it's like it just doesn't. If he cut out the jokes, I thought he would make a fantastic Thor film,
yeah. I think
but he's
he's
not going to
got
do that.
no. Well, a Thor movie is always going to be a little funny at least, but like I do think that he should have in that particular movie he should lean a little bit more, maybe a bit more seriously, in particular because we're dealing with Jane Foster dying.
Yeah,
You
it's such a
know,
weird choice to amp up the comedy when you're doing the drama one.
yeah. Like I can see doing that roller coaster ride of emotion, but it doesn't quite do that. We see that with the Christian Bale character, but like we don't see it with Thor and as much, which seems like an odd choice because you would think you would want to mirror those two a bit more,
Yeah,
because that's like traditionally kind of what you do with an antagonist, which is the antagonist is has an opposing opinion or path or something that's in direct contrast that mirrors the hero, but their conclusion is in direct contrast.
and there's
Until there is like that meeting, and then one of them comes to a reconciliation, which passes on to the either passes on to the other, or the villain is destroyed.
one of the problems is that Thor is the only good god that we see in any of those films.
Yeah. He actually, despite his like egocentrism and his self-centeredness, he actually does care about people. He actually does
Yeah,
care about the people who like worship him and stuff. He thinks that they should be allowed to like live in awesomeness forever.
yeah.
You know.
It's but having him be the only one, that means that Christian Bale's character, Gore, has a severe point,
Oh
which
yeah. Well,
the
that's what
film doesn't grapple with at all.
that's yeah, it doesn't grapple with it like it should. Although it doesn't completely drop it because that is what makes God Killer so compelling. Because you're like, yeah, doesn't this guy have a point? Aren't the gods basically assholes?
Yeah.
You
It
know?
also doesn't establish what a god is, because Thor's ones are advanced aliens, and then you get other ones are supposed to be other things like from Moon Knight, Khonshu,
Khonshu,
who
yeah.
seems to be some sort of a spirit of some sort. So Marvel, it unfortunately didn't quite establish what a god is. It seems to be a lot of different things.
Well, to be fair to the MCU, Marvel never did that.
Yeah,
They never fucking
it's
made that clear.
yeah, and for a film, it doesn't damage the comic so much, but for the film, you need it a bit more coherent.
Yeah. You need to at least establish the relationships between these various things. Which is why I thought that it. I'm not really looking forward to the Young Avengers.
Mhm.
Um,
They keep getting older, though.
yeah. Well, but here's the thing: it's not that I want to hold on to like Iron Man and those guys. It's that I felt that the better passing of the torch. You could still have the Young Avengers, but like the Young Avengers are not a replacement
Oh,
for
shit.
the Avengers. I was like, no. If you want to do like the new
Apologies for
Avengers,
that. I pulled my headphones out, so I missed you completely.
oh, I was saying is I don't have a problem with having the Young Avengers, but the Young Avengers are not a substitute for the Avengers. And
That's true.
I thought that what they probably uh, should have gone in the direction of was quite literally, oh no, some of these other characters that we've been starting to hang out with, they become part of the Avengers. Like, and the Avengers have like a different, have to have like this different form of organization because these people are like a little weirder, like, you know, like Moon Knight, like She-Hulk, you know, like they're
And
a little
and then they
stranger.
stopped and then they stopped doing the Avengers films. It's y-
Yeah, they stopped doing
it,
the Avengers films because they were building up towards the Kang Dynasty, and then a monkey wrench got thrown into that.
they had a perfect storm after Endgame for which is
Yeah,
any basically any other franchise would have immolated. The fact that they haven't showed the ongoing power, even though it's hobbled of the MCU as a narrative, success.
yeah. It's one of those things where I'm actually surprised it holds together at all because like everything that was not in their control was moving against them.
Yep.
You know, and that is
And they made some fuck up. They made some bad decisions too.
yeah. They made some poor decisions, but like they weren't the kind of decisions that would have been deal breakers before. You
Yeah.
know, they just would have been seen as like, well, they could have done this way better. You
It all
know,
went wrong at once, right after the height, and
yeah,
Endgame was a natural end point. But
yeah,
I got the feeling that after Avengers 6, is it gonna be? Yeah, it's the second part of the ones upcoming. They're gonna reset the whole thing. They're gonna collapse the multiverse, turn it into one universe, keep what they want to keep, recast what they want to recast, bring the dead back to life, have mutants there from the start, make it a reboot of the MCU, keeping some characters, and they'll restart. And I'm very confident of
oh
that.
yeah. They'll have a Crisis of Infinite Earths kind of thing happen.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, oh no, mutants have been there, and you've been like, how come we didn't know about that? And I know when they're going to do that. In my opinion, I know when they're going to do that. Fantastic Four. That's where that's going to really start.
That's coming out before I think the next Avengers film because it
Yeah,
allegedly it's set in another universe.
yeah. But that's why that's where it's going to start. That's where they're
Okay.
going to start doing that. It's not going to be when it ultimately happens, but because we're already doing well, the Fantastic Four are in an alternate universe. It's sort of like, oh, okay, well, that's going to collide with the rest of the MCU at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
You
the
know,
theory is that the Fantastic Four their Galactus will destroy their universe. And so they have to basically escape into the main MCU universe, which
ooh,
is an
they should
interesting way to handle it.
start with that.
That's apparently what they're doing because Ralph
They
Ineson is
should
playing
start
Galactus.
with that. Ooh,
But the
ooh.
but I mentioned this while you were away, and I think you might get a kick out of this.
Mm-hmm.
On on YouTube, I found the BBC radio adaptation of Ring, the novel.
I didn't know
And
there was one.
there is, and half the cast of Torchwood are involved. They've gone the grudge route of having most of the main characters be British in Japan. It is so odd. You got to listen to this. It's on YouTube. It's like BBC 2011, something like that. It's not terrible. It is just odd that the main character, who is being portrayed as a man for once, like in the book,
Okay.
is he's an English guy. His wife is played by Gwen from Torchwood, and they're dealing with stuff
Okay.
like Ryuji's still Japanese, and so is Sadako, but a lot of other people not so much.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
weird.
it's weird that they're going back to the male protagonist because like they went with the mom for they've been going with the mom since the manga. You know.
And the Korean version, it has the guy protagonist, I think. The Ring Virus. I think that has the male protagonist. I gotta rewatch that.
Oh,
That was better than the
I don't
American.
know if I've seen Ring Virus.
It's better than the American remake, in my opinion.
Really? Because I actually think the American remake's really good.
Oh, see, this is one of these bits where we disagree.
Hmm.
Because I'm like, I when I saw the American one, I was like, I hate you for the moments when you're not just like the Japanese one, and I hate you for the moments when you are just like the Japanese one. Just don't exist.
Oh man, no, I actually really liked the American remake because couple things. I appreciated the fact that they tried to make something that was quintessentially Japanese as American as they could, while still keeping essentially keeping Sadako. You know, she's named Samara, but like whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I really appreciated about it, because when I first heard like American adaptation, I was like, that story is so Japanese. I don't know how you're going to set that in America, you know? And it would be, and I was expecting something a lot closer to the Grudge remake, you know, which my opinion of the Grudge remake is, please no.
I watched the Grudge remake. I spent the entire time with the people who was watching it making up Japanese jokes that they might tell about Americans. You know, just sort of, jokes like one of the ones I remember was, what do you call an American who comes in at, 4:45, and then leaves at, 5 to 5, and calls that a full day's work. You call that, they're a hard worker, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because they mainly have like, and why is that? It's because they mainly have experience with American business through our CEOs who are notoriously lazy, you know.
And Ted Raimi for some reason.
And Ted Raimi, yeah.
Why were there so many Americans? I know that expats tend to be a bit insular, but Jesus.
Yeah, it something that had a much better, excuse me, a much better handle on the whole like expat in Japan thing was the Monarch television show.
But the Monarch TV show?
Yeah. Apple TV did a television show about Monarch, like from the MonsterVerse, Godzilla and versus Kong and all that.
That's the first I've heard about that.
Oh, it's actually really good. It's
nice.
actually quite good. And the thing that really fucking freaked me out about it is that I was expecting that Godzilla was going to be that thing over there. You know, we reference it, but we don't really deal with it. No, like fucking Godzilla actually like rises and attacks shit a few times. And
okay,
I'm like,
I'm gonna watch this.
Oh, okay. And at the very end of the season, like King Kong shows up, so it's a lot of fun. It's really cool to watch Kurt Russell and his son play the same character in two different times.
Oh, Kurt Russell's in it? How did I not hear about this?
Yeah. But because it was Apple TV. Apple TV is where great television shows that nobody watches go.
Is that where Counterpoint is? Counterpart.
I don't know, but it is where the Tetris movie is, and that is also excellent.
Oh yes, it's about the creation of Tetris. It's not actually about blocks.
Yeah, it's literally about the creation of Tetris, and it is actually incredibly historically accurate, including the quick, we gotta run, the Russians are coming with guns, you gotta get on this plane, they're gonna start shooting. It's like, I'm just trying to make a Nintendo game, like all that real actually happened. It's why I kept saying there needed to be a chess-like musical all about Tetris. Because it's like that the story of Tetris is like chess. You're like, what the fuck?
But on the subject of obscure TV shows that, that likely the other of us have never heard of, there is an Indian 79 episode, 25 minutes an episode, live action, Bollywood styled but without the musical, biography of Alexander the Great. And it's on YouTube. It's subtitled into English. It is glorious. It's called Sikander.
Wait, I've heard of this. Yes. I didn't know that was what that movie was about.
Well, it's not a movie. It's TV show.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean,
It's
you know what I meant.
giant though. The main guy, giving full on Bollywood villain energy, and like I like to call Alexander the Great, history's greatest villain protagonist.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
this guy brings the energy. He's full on pantomime. I am going to do a music video to this with Iron Maiden's Alexander the Great. I don't know when I'm gonna do this, but I will. It'll be so good. It's like I am obsessed with this. Okay, episode 1. Olympias gets raped by King Philip of Macedon,
Right.
and then she attacks him, and then she leaves. She goes to the temple of Zeus and basically yells at the statue that my son will not be the son of Philip. He will not be Philip's flesh. He will be your son, Zeus. And Zeus, is clearly being like, finally consent. And so he turns into a swarm of snakes that come from the ground, the walls, the ceiling, and they all envelop her. And that's the conception of Alexander. It is amazing. I haven't got to the Gordian knot yet.
Did they go into the whole like Philip of Macedonia and why he didn't attack Sparta thing?
They didn't mention that. I don't think.
That's too bad. That's like my favorite story, my favorite Philip of Macedonia story, because it is him blinking. Like the Spartans are basically like, do it. We dare you. We double dare you. And he's like, oh shit, these guys mean business. Yeah, we're not attacking Sparta, guys. Quick, Athens,
I will disagree though slightly, because I'd say that's the last hurrah of Sparta, because they were a spent force by then.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely they were.
There's no way that they would have been able to stand against Philip or Alexander. No. And them not going there is less of a thing. It's more of them recognizing that Sparta isn't a threat. There's no point to it at all. They've got no land. They're crap. They basically become a shadow of their former selves. Why bother? At one point,
I would agree, but the whole negotiation is amazing.
Yeah, the laconic.
Yeah. Philip of Macedonia giving this big, like, telling his messenger, do this thing. Send him. It's this big, long thing, and then the Spartans, is like, when we come, we will, blah, 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 blah. And the Spartans just send back a single word, if. And I was like, that's a fucking... And then he was like, okay, maybe this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. I'm pretty sure. What do they know that I don't, Like, no, just leave them.
Well, Philip did his own version of that, which I'm going to butcher in the telling, but he wrote the big document basically declaring that the Hellenistic League, containing all of these different parts of Greece, are going to, invade Persia. But he also specified, not including the Spartans. But the translation of the original Greek in this document wasn't like, they're not coming. It was like they were invited to join us and they said no. But so basically it was like, we asked them to, we said, do you want to come, invade and conquer Persia, but you didn't want to, you fucking wusses. But yeah, check out.
I was about to say the people that really perfected that kind of negotiation, even above Sparta, even above all of them, were the Mongols. And it's very interesting looking at the history of the Mongols and realizing what the connective tissue was between the tribes that they betrayed after getting into an agreement with them, the ones they spared, and the ones they just flat out went to direct war with. And it all comes down to whether or not they killed the Mongols' messenger or injured them in any way. Like, if the messenger was just allowed to come in, leave, come back, then the Mongols would be like, all right, negotiations are still on, boys. Yeah. And they might have been able to come to some form of agreement. But that is not what most of the city-states did. most of them would try to kill the messenger to send a message back. And that's when the Mongols were like, all right, if the messenger lived, then we're going to try to convince these people that we're not going to attack them. But after we win against the guys we're initially with, we're going to double back and conquer them anyway.
Yeah.
If the messenger died, they just went to war with you immediately.
It's the Crusader Kings player in me, but if your neighbors are the Mongol Empire, you declare fealty immediately, and then you try to assassinate the Khan and his successor and their successor until the entire empire collapses. That's the only hope you've got.
One of the problems I had with the Disney movie Mulan is having the dudes kill the messenger. And I'm like, no, they would never have done that. They would never have done that. There's no point to them. There would be no point in killing the messenger unless they had already killed theirs. That's when they would do that. That's when that shit would go down.
It would have been interesting. Now, the result of this would be pretty obvious, but an interesting interaction would have been Vlad the Impaler versus the Mongols.
Oh, very much so. No, the Mongols would have won.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Definitely would have won.
Mehmet defeated Vlad, and the Mongols could defeat Mehmet. Mehmet was B-list conquering, Genghis was A-list.
Yeah. But
it would have been the interaction would have been interesting.
Yeah. Because that would have been like the goriest fight of all time.
I mean, based on they're like a paper rock scissors thing. You've got the not kill the messenger thing. You got Vlad famously nailed the turbans to the heads of the messengers, and then of course the Mongols come in, and Vlad defeated one of Mehmet's armies with the forest of corpses. So the Mongols would have been slightly deterred, but not as much as Mehmet.
yeah, because the way I like to put it is Vlad had the field of corpses, right? Fire and corpses, that's a big thing. The Mongols had rivers of blood.
One of the few ones that wouldn't have worked against.
Yeah, that would have been one of those oh yeah, oh no one's better at this than us. Let us show you.
But because the Mongols weren't forcing people to convert, and they usually ended up converting to whatever native religion if it was far away from their homelands.
Yeah, because they would kill the nobles, and then give the craftsmen an option, which was become part of the horde. You can bring your own shit, but you now work for the Khan.
Yeah.
Or we can kill you and take your shit anyway.
And with them not forcing conversion, and Vlad despising the boyars, in an alternate reality, I could totally see Vlad, happily serving underneath the Khan, and then trying to convert him to Christianity.
That I don't know how far that would have gotten, but I could definitely see Vlad Tepes teaming up with the Mongols to defeat one of his enemies.
There was interactions between the Mongols and the Crusaders about teaming up and fighting the Saracens, but I don't think that got very far.
No, the Mongols only didn't get too far into Europe comparatively, because they started running into that until much later, the areas between Eastern Europe and what we consider Eastern Europe and Western Europe, that kind of area in between, was a blend of the two. That was kind of a wasteland. There wasn't a lot going on as far as shit to steal and take. Like, not even technology. It was that because
Mhm.
which was the Mongols' big thing. They love to steal treasure, but they love to steal technology more. That's why they spared the craftsmen. Um, they got
The
into
Mongols
Europe.
hunting the
They got into Europe, and then for like a couple of years, they were like, "Dude, these people have nothing. Like, these people have nothing. Like, d- hey, Khan, would it be more right if we like fucking came back a little bit and concentrated more on the Russians? They've got stuff."
This is where one of the bits where my games of Crusader Kings become a bit accurate then, because whenever I'm playing as Genghis Khan, or one of my characters becomes Genghis Khan because it's a title, you get all the special Mongol army and special bonuses, and I love just conquering as much as possible before my guy dies of old age. He usually gets assassinated, somewhere around Europe after conquering, the rest of Europe, because his people get so fucked off with them, for not concentrating on the other guys. Because I want to create Mongolian Europe. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, someone's like, what would happen if Vlad the Impaler was actually like Dracula from Castlevania? What would have happened then? Would the Mongols still win? Okay. So if Dracula's got magic and nobody else, Dracula wins. But it is a world that has magic in it that people
Yeah.
know about, particularly when you get to like Islam and points east. So,
Especially Kublai Khan in the TV show Marco Polo was played by Benedict Wong,
yeah,
who has magic in the MCU.
yeah, yeah. So, what would more than likely happen is if they came into conflict as opposed to like some sort of arrangement, then you've got a real fight on your hands. And it could go either way. Because I could
Yeah.
totally see like the Mongols having like oh god, what are those guys called? There's a specific name for like the is essentially the Islamic wizards, but I can't remember what it fucking is.
Vizier?
Yeah, Vizier, that's more of an advisor that as a trope
Yeah.
tends to have magical powers, but like there's a specific like thing that that a an Arabian wizard is. But I forget what the name of it is. You could see them having that on top of like whatever like Asian magic they would bring to bear. So it would be a pretty on the magical front, it'd be a very even fight. On the purely martial front, the Mongols would still have the advantage because they would be more mobile and there are more of them, and they all fight like demons. That was the big thing
They
about
do.
them. That was actually the image of the demon. And particularly the Jin starts to become syncretic with the imagery of the Mongols for a reason.
You talk about the Jinn.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the interesting bits of pre-Islamic Arabian folklore and mythology, which ended up in the Quran and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But what famous person is a who is not a Muslim, who is not related to anything like that, is a prophet in Islam, thanks
Do
to
you
the same thing?
do you mean Jesus?
No, no. So he would be related because he's like
Oh,
Christianity,
okay,
being
okay.
other religion.
Jesus
This
don't
is a
count. Got it.
secular person who has ended up as a prophet in Islam, thanks to a similar situation as what happened with the jinn.
Okay. Um.
We discussed him earlier.
Fuck. Dun 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 dun. It wouldn't be Sudakai. It oh, wait, or would it be Sudakai? No, no, no. We didn't mention Sudakai before. Fuck. Philip?
Alexander.
Alexander. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's under the name Dual Khanum, the two-horned one. The story of Dual Khanum is that he comes from the west. He has a great army. He goes in and he defeats all these enemies, which were demons, and he creates a great wall, and around the area, which is all a very poetic version of Alexander coming in and creating an empire. And the image of the dual-horned one comes from the coins of him, which had him wearing a helmet with horns, with ram's horns. Now, modern Islamic scholars say this isn't Alexander the Great. They say it's Cyrus the Great. But until the Renaissance, when people began to look at this, Hellenistic pagan and realized, wait a sec, this guy isn't a monotheist. He is actually a pagan. We thought he was a monotheist for some reason. I don't know why. But then they decided that it can't have been him because he was actually a pagan. But before that, there is about 1,100 years of Islamic scholarship saying, yeah, Dual Khanum is Alexander the Great. The guy was a monotheist. He was awesome. And then suddenly like, oh shit, he was a pagan. How did we miss this?
Oh, so it's one of those things where like which exact figure was the origin is in question, but because of the assumption it was one person, that influence becomes part of the imagery and part of the culture.
Yeah, and because they were quite open about what that was from like the very early days of Islam. It's like it's a little bit of a desperate sort of flail for them to say later on that it's Cyrus, even though Cyrus was Zoroastrian.
Yeah, but at least Zoroastrians is like the Islam can trace its has already traced its ancestry to Zoroastrianism, so that's already cool. You know what I mean? Man, that is fascinating. It makes sense. It makes a huge amount of sense,
So I'm chatting with Jackula.
Hey,
Sorry,
is that Omega?
Omega's just turned up.
Hey, Omega.
Omega's just woke up. He says hi. Omega has just woke up.
It sounds like you and Omega are like on a thing where me and the Countess are, which is like we're on opposing sleep schedules.
Essentially,
Yeah.
Eric got into going to sleep and getting up very early, like during the COVID, and I always tended to work better at night.
That's what happened with us, except there was this added aspect to it, which is most of the Countess's work comes from Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
And so she keeps Hong Kong business hours, which is
Makes sense.
significantly, which is like basically 12 hours difference and an international dateline,
With us, one of the useful things in this is that we're not wanting to relax and play video games at the same time. Like generally, I'll sleep from about 6-ish till about 2, and he'll sleep from about 8 till about 5:30 or 6.
Yeah.
Or 8 or 9.
Oh,
and so
Omega is
we have a lot of
officially
overlap.
he now?
Oh yes.
Okay. Just checking. I knew they, but I didn't know if it was he.
Yes, very much so. And he has the beard to prove it.
Oh, I gotta see. You got a picture? I gotta see this.
Eric, I'll see if he can come over to say hi.
Oh, that'd be great.
Hi. Jackula. Like right this second. Oh, he loves you. I can send him a picture. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a bit too early for him to pop into the chat. But
okay, was that his voice I heard?
Yeah. He's the only other one here.
the voice change happened too. That's great.
Yes, his voice has changed. Actually, if you look at backseat critique of mine, last one I think we did was Carousel 3. You can see, I've done the vlog with him.
Diamanda, what episode would that be again?
Look up Carousel, like carousel, but with hell.
Caross
Hell.
Hell. Okay, let's see. I think you'll have to spell it for me because it keeps sending me to Vina Cava.
Okay, the Estrogen Gospels. Try that.
Okay,
it's another vlog we record. It's an English horror movie, but we recorded vlogs for them back to back.
Yeah. It's right there on the. He's right there on the thumbnail. Oh my god! Oh my god! That's great! Oh my god! God damn it! Got better beard than I'll ever have. Like. Oh, I'm jealous.
Oh, honey, Jackula looked up the backseat critique, last backseat critique we did to see a picture, and he's jealous of your beard.
Man. Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, God. Although that takes me back to like some of my because this is something me and Omega kind of bonded over, which was White Wolf. I was I was a little sad that the new version of Vampire did not take off like I thought it deserved to, and which is Vampire 5th, which I actually thought was a massive improvement. Like they went back to the original timeline, updated it to 2020, and like been going forward since. But the thing that was really sad about it is that the main book is really good. Like the way they updated the history, the way they changed certain things, a lot of it's very good. The problem is that most of the supplemental material they've made since has been very lackluster. And that upset me because I was like, oh, come on, you had such a strong start. You really could build this. Like, one of the problems I have always had is with the Ravnos. And I was very, very, very worried, and it turns out quite rightly so, that what they were going to do with the Ravnos is to curtail the racism of them being gypsies. They were going to instead water it down and do something dull, which they did.
Yeah, it's kind of the danger when you're taking stuff that later on you worked out was problematic and you cut out the interesting part of it along with the bad stuff.
Yeah, and I understand that tightrope, but the ability to transform a negative stereotype into something greater,
yeah,
to change the context. That's what art does. That's something art can do that almost nothing else can. And it was like, no. And instead of doing this dumb thing where it's like, oh, they give them a really dumb weakness, which is, oh, they can only sleep in one place for a week at a time. Otherwise, they start taking more sun damage. And I'm like, that is stupid.
That sounds kind of bad too, considering they're Romanis.
Yeah, exactly. But and I was like, that's bad for two reasons. One, you just switching out one stereotype for another. Second of all, because the original one is that they had to make a roll to resist lying to people, which was like,
yeah.
But from a game perspective, the problem with this is, oh, so we have to bring everything to a halt in order to address this thing. That's stupid. Like, they're supposed to be a member of the group. and let's get real. A vampire coterie don't move around a lot. They tend to have like their digs, and they kind of hang out there and then work out from that, because it's all about territory, right?
Plus, when you're moving around, someone has to come up with some sort of a rule on how much constitutes moving. Does moving your a bed 1 foot to the left, does that count? Is it a building? Is it a mile?
Yeah, they said 1,000 feet.
So someone's got to work. So whatever biological process that requires that, you've got to work out what the origin of that is. It's stupid all the way down.
Yeah. Whereas I thought that something that might have actually worked a little bit better and would have actually have like hooked in to like the Romany concepts of the vampire would have been, and this would have been difficult, but you could have done it. It would have still been, it still would have worked, which is you get less blood from drinking from people that are not part of the bloodline.
Okay, that seems to be a little bit less problematic.
Yeah, because a lot of the vampire lore in Romany is that they feed on family members.
Yeah.
So it would be one of those things where, like, I would probably even do it where it was like, yeah, you get a bonus if you feed from a family member, but anyone else you take a negative. So you got to manage it that way, and your reputation among the Romany is kind of twofold. One, yeah, you're a family member, but everyone just kind of distrusts you. But at the same time, they all know that you're the one to come to when it deals with the supernatural and dark things.
I can see that working, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, well, that's what I would have done. I probably also would have given them like this kind of weird advantage where where there is a thing that does oh yeah, you can't just try to get rid of them. Like they have like a deal with like spirits or something, where if someone tries to get rid of a Ravnos, like the local spirits turn on you. That's sort of like, oh yeah, they're just allowed to wander. Don't do anything. It's like, oh, we've got Ravnos here, and it's like, yeah, don't do anything. Don't do anything, or the spirits will turn, or bad shit starts to happen, and they don't have to do anything.
It definitely sounds more well considered than what they went with.
Yeah.
But it's almost 6. So I'm going to go very soon because I am a bit tired.
Okay, yeah, that's no problem. I've kept you for like an hour, 2.5 hours. It's been great, by the way.
But I'll be happy to do it again. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But to let you know, something interesting, vampire related. My next month movie review should be The Boys from County Hell.
Oh, that movie's great. I love that one.
So we're doing that one, and yeah, that film got a lot of the mythology about Abertac right, a lot of it. The Irish ancient Celtic vampire whose grave is actually is a place. It's located not far from where I was raised. I've never seen it. It's on private land. It's not a cairn like that. It's a big flat stone.
Oh, okay.
But because it's a big flat stone rather than a cairn, my theory is that if it is actually, if some ancient people did put that there to bury someone, whether they was vampire or not, I doubt. But it's a dolmen. The portal tombs, the big stone table tombs that you see in Irish sort of things.
Oh, so like you lift up the stone and underneath is kind of this mausoleum.
You get the sort of, yeah, you would, if I'm right about this, you remove the top and you would find 2 other stones shaped like that, because the dolmens are basically, yeah, I'll show you the shape. Dolmen is shaped like that.
Yeah. Like a little. They're a little Stonehenge-y.
Yeah, a little bit, but like much bigger than stone. Not as big as Stonehenge itself, but the stones are bigger than Stonehenge generally, and they're flat. They're thinner. But I also realized when working on the script for this, because I talked about dolmens, because I go into Irish mythology and stuff like that.
Oh man.
The stone table from Narnia is a dolmen.
Oh.
C.S. Lewis was Northern Irish. The dolmen is meant to be a portal between the world of the living and the world of the dead.
Oh, so even in super Christian world, the old paganism finds its way through.
I am convinced that that was a deliberate reference by C.S. Lewis to ancient Irish paganism.
Well,
But
it would make sense because it's supposed to be like a thing that existed in like the before time, before even the
yeah,
White Witch and all
yeah, the
that.
deep magic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it fits, and it's
Yeah.
and him being Irish, he's from Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
He's from the area that it's Belfast-ish area. The but the interesting thing is almost no one has worked this out. I looked up Dolmen C.S. Lewis when I came to this conclusion. I think I found like two people on the internet who'd mentioned it, and I'm like, this should be a recognized sort of theory or hypothesis at
Yeah.
least.
Well, like there's also this weird this is where it gets weird and the analogy doesn't kind of breaks down a little bit, but you can still see it. Uh the White Witch has a lot in common with the Morrigan.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know,
Also, a lot of Norse sort of some inspiration too.
yeah, but she's like white imagery as opposed to crow imagery.
Yeah.
But that probably, well, let me put it this way, in my superstitious like magical mind, it's like, well, you don't want to slight the Morrigan. That's a bad idea. The very land of Ireland will turn on you if you do that, you know?
Oh, you just get Scathach to help. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
And C.S. Lewis, he would take elements of myth and other things, and he would put them through a lot less filters than Tolkien did. To be,
Yeah. Tolkien did do a lot. He stylized things a lot
yeah,
more. Like one of the things I thought was very interesting about like the translation of what Dungeons and Dragons did and how it actually comes from so much of Tolkien and some of the things that Tolkien kind of brought over, but the context didn't quite come clear. The idea of the light elves and the dark elves, which is very Norse, but the elves were just like, that was just like a nomenclature of like those people what do this, and the light elves are basically, oh, well, they're the ones who are in the daylight. They take care of the trees and shit like that, whereas the dark elves are the ones who live underground. They mine ore, they create caves. The dwarves. They're the dwarves. But when you go back through what Tolkien did and you start seeing reference to dark elves, you're like, well, who are these people? Because you don't associate that with the word you associate with that is dwarf. And so they created literal dark elves to fill that slot because they thought that must be different.
Because the elves and the dwarves are the same species in the Norse mythology.
Yeah. They are the same type peoples, and this really starts to make a lot of Norse mythology doesn't start to make a lot of sense until you realize that the imagery of the Norse all has to do with the wall or the gate, the fence. There is us, and then there is the outsiders. Like, and every word associated with things that are, not to be dealt with. comes from the word outside the wall. The Jotun are outside the wall. The Jotuns eventually become the trolls. They are outside the wall. They become the giants. They're still outside the wall. You know, that's the idea. They are the outsiders. You know, whereas we in the wall are protected by these other things. They are our things. They are inside the wall. That's why Asgard is walled.
The outsider people, they are the neathings.
Yeah. Yeah, they are those things out there that we are pretty much afraid of for one reason or another. You know, and when you realize how cruel those Nordic winters are and the things that they have to contend with, it really makes sense. Because you're like, no, don't go beyond the wall. We have the fire here that keeps us fucking alive. We have the lodges and the dwellings. Don't go out there. That none of this is out there. And everything that they might be afraid of, like giant wolves, you know.
And anyone who survives out in the cold must be in a snow thing, which is, you know, ice giants and stuff like that. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's like why in the Celtic version, actually, I don't know if it's Celtic specifically, but in that region, Western Europe, the Western, going as far as Spain, thing, the equivalent of that, of being like, you know, an ice giant, is being a blacksmith. Because the blacksmith must be in league with hell, because they deal with fire. They have special knowledge that allows them to melt metal into a liquid. It looks evil as hell when you watch it happen, you know, and they tend to be deformed. Why are they? Because of forge accidents. They're missing a hand. Half their face is gone, you know, like.
The use of the horseshoe is a traditional symbol of good luck. Probably connect with that. Yeah. But also there's a couple of African areas where magic is construction, in the same way that in Western traditions magic is spoken, spells, things like that.
Yes.
And in African ones, you build something, a blacksmith creates, and that's how you do spells. Years ago, Kyle did a film based on that mythology, and he had to go into that, and I can't remember the name of the film.
Oh, was it Aramentari?
Maybe. I can't remember.
Was it a recent one or an older one?
No, this was years and years ago.
Oh,
this was like, you know, at least 8 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that.
Oh, well, it might still be that movie then. There's a great movie called Aramentari. That when you look at all of the stuff about it, you're like, oh, this is going to be like a serious horror story, right? It's actually not. It's a fairy tale about a young girl who runs into a blacksmith that has like a grudge against hell. And so he is trying to make a device that will allow him to storm the gates of hell and get his wife back from Lucifer. And that's funny
not
thing,
the film I'm thinking of. That's definitely not the film, but that sounds fun as hell.
Oh, it's great. Aramentari is great. Because they include things about the myths, about the folklore, that you're like, nobody includes this stuff. Like, aha, demon, I have here a jar of garbanzo beans. And he spills it. The demon has to count them. And you're like,
oh, yes.
God damn it. That's amazing.
The vampire counting thing. That's in Slavic mythology too.
Yeah. And the funny thing about as it relates to vampires is it actually comes from a place. It actually comes from something. And it comes from the reason the rank associated with the vampire is called the Count. Because why is a Count called a Count? He's responsible for the census.
I thought the vampire was connected with the Count because of Count Dracula.
Yes, but there's a reason
Vlad the Impaler wasn't a Count.
No, Vlad the Impaler was not a Count.
Yes, he was definitely not.
A prince and a king. But the legend of the vampire becomes associated with the upper class. And the member of the upper class most likely to be encountered is the count, because he takes the census. He's the one who says, we
Ah,
have this many bales of hay, we have this. He collects the taxes. He's the one that
okay.
you would think of as living off the blood of the peasantry.
That sounds too ridiculous to be true, but also so ridiculous that it should be true. Because
Yeah,
reality is ridiculous. History is ridiculous.
yeah. And so that's why the vampire must count, because that was the rank, what the rank of count did. And that became associated with the vampire.
Interesting.
Yeah,
But
it's really funny. So what I'm saying is, the Count from Sesame Street is the real deal. I mean,
it is multiple level references. The but I'm going to be heading. But I had a lot of fun. If you want to do this again, please let me know.
oh
I'll
yeah,
happily
yeah,
do
I'd
it
love
again.
to. Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, Diamanda Hagen, plug yourself.
I do videos on YouTube about weird movies. Tomorrow I shall be putting regular YouTubing. It's currently for patrons. My next movie review. It's an ultra-violent mid-90s English gangster film. It was made by amateurs with no budget, and it comes across as an amateur sort of film, very awkwardly acted, as you would expect, but every so often it just explodes and turns into a John Woo quality gunplay film.
Well, what
It's
movie is this?
it's called Sudden Fury. It's from 1997. There's many films called Sudden Fury. This is the 1997 one. There's a kill count on YouTube. There's also a trailer. The gunplay is fantastic. Everything else is like a student film. It is so weird that it's the same guy did both. He directed the whole thing. But my review of that's coming out tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Do you still use, so plug your social medias if you still use them, which I believe you do, because that's how I found you again.
Yeah, I still am on Twitter. Refusing to call it X. On Blue Sky, just as Demanda Hagen both times. It's the ones I'm. Yeah, that's basically the only social media I'm on. But
Yeah.
see you all.
Like, put in Diamanda Hagen, because if you just put in Diamanda, you will probably get Diamanda Galas, who is
That's true.
where half your name comes from. The other half being Nina Hagen.
She is much more famous than I am.
Yeah. So you'll probably get that too, but you'll be confused because you'll listen to either of them, and then you'll be like, well, this feels like Diamanda Hagen, but it's not. Like, what's going on? I see the eyes of the devil, and they say, and I ask, what time is it? How much time do you need? Yeah, I love
Diamanda
Diamanda
Gallis is
Galas.
such a fantastic performer.
Mm.
So is Nina Hagen.
Oh yeah, but and it was interesting. Like, one of the things I thought was interesting about your internet persona is I was like, oh, someone else put that together. That there is actually connective tissue between these two performers.
Do you know Hagen's middle name, which doesn't come up often,
No,
because the third in the trifecta, Grace Jones.
wait, what?
Hagen's full name is Diamanda Grace Jones Hagen. Grace Jones put together as one word, and the idea is those are the three characters that the character took inspiration from for creating the character.
Oh, not Nina Hagen, Diamanda Hagen. Oh, okay.
Yes,
I
sorry,
was
Diamanda Hagen.
confused.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, Diamanda Grace Jones Hagen.
Oh man, that's so cool. Oh, that's great. Oh, okay. Well, it has been great having you. Yeah, we'll have to do this again. And
Happy to.
all right. So yeah, definitely say hi to Omega goes, does Omega still go by Omega? Or is it now mainly Eric?
Omega and Eric.
Okay. Well, send my love to Omega Eric.
I will. And if you do end up in Istanbul, do please stop in Ireland for a few days and we'll put you up.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Well, yeah,
you.
because I'll have a captive audience to show movies to.
That's oh yeah. Yeah. We probably we'll have some shit to show each other.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic.
All right. You
Good
take care,
night.
Diamanda. Good night. Oh man, that was cool. That was super cool. Hey, cute little cat girl. Unfortunately, you're coming in on the tail end there. But yes, Flashman, vampires, demons, oni. Is there nothing beans can't stop? Werewolves. Werewolves. They don't stop werewolves. There's nothing in the werewolf myth that says they gotta count shit. Vampires, jinn, rakshasa, all that shit. Like, some sort of counting is probably, could be involved. It could work. But werewolves, nah, nothing. Crosses don't even fucking, work against werewolves. All right. Well, I'd love to continue to hang out, but I don't know where to go from here. So I don't know where to go. What if the beans were silver, though? Well, then you could throw them at the werewolf and they would be repelled, So but they wouldn't have to count them, Oni in Japanese folklore are pretty high tier compared to the others. It depends. It depends. They can be. Oni is a whole, classic creature, So you've got your regular Oni who are just it's an Oni that lives in the woods. He may or may not be that powerful. But then you've got the really big ones, that carry around the iron club, those ones are super powerful. And they got and some of them have magic powers. Some of them don't. Some of them are just big. But yeah, some of them got magic powers, man. And those are the really powerful ones. Those are the ones who are they're like Rakshasa or Jinn or things like that, or maybe even a Fritz. They work on they have there's a scale of power with all those entities, most people, when we think of the Rakshasa, well, we think of tiger people, but in mythology, the Rakshasa are so much more. Some of them are on the level of gods. And I believe some of the Akuma are actually have the same origin as the Rakshasa. I think they were syncretic at one point. So when you see Akuma's fist and shit like that, that's the level that some of them reach. Dispel evil by irrigating, by irritation. Yeah, Oni can be associated with a whole bunch of things. They can be associated with a whole bunch of things. They're a whole class of creature. Yeah, the Rakshasa tend to have multiple heads and several arms and shit like that. They got associated with tigers because of their rapacious nature. Because tigers are man-eater. The Rakshasa are man-eaters. And they all want to eat a holy man because that will make them immortal. Just like some of the demons in Chinese mythology. If I eat the flesh of a monk or a holy man, I will become immortal, Yeah, kind of like yokai and kami, the Oni are, sometimes people lump the Oni in with the rest of the yokai and some of them don't. Some of them have them as a slightly separate thing. Remember Uncle from Jackie Chan? I actually really like Uncle from Jackie Chan Adventures. One more thing, Jackie. One more thing. Uncle, I cannot talk right now. What is more important than talking to Uncle? I love... Yeah, like the Korean flick. Yeah. Are you talking about Exuma? Like, I think that vlog just went up today. I think Horror Guru just put up Exuma today. That movie is fantastic. Yeah, that would be an example of the difference in power levels that sometimes an Oni can have. Holy crap. Like, yeah, sometimes they're just evil and powerful, And sometimes they're just like ogres, they hang out in the woods, they got big wooden clubs, they smash people and eat them, and that's what they do. But some of them are a bit extra. Some of them are super extra. One of my favorite, it was one of the reasons I really love the game series Onimusha, because at core, Onimusha is about East meets West. Because it's done right after the conquest of Nobunaga and his assassination. So, it makes sense. If you're a fan of Japanese history and storytelling, it makes perfect sense. That it would be like, in the post-Nobunaga era, like, there's all this Western influence that starts to come in. Which, the Japanese are very xenophobic, so they were like, "Ooh, it's different, it's weird. We don't know if we like that, but we'll take your technology." That's the Mongol in them, as I like to say. But yeah, that's why there are, in some translations of Onimusha, it's the demons versus the ogres, whereas in others, it's the demons versus the Oni, with the demons always being Western demons, based on the Western demon concept, whereas the Oni are always, or the ogres are always Japanese. And why the warrior is always kind of on the side of the Oni. Because he's Japan. And then they got real weird with that third one and just had Jean Reno in there as one of the characters, which I loved how bonkers that was. It's like, yeah, we're going to do a fantasy version of, this, medieval Japan, but then we're going to stick Jean Reno into it, and he's from the future. But it's always got that East meets West thing. It's always got it, because that's what the story's really, that's what it's really about. Yeah, humans come up with a whole bunch of shit. Like, we've actually got quite a lot of history to draw upon, all of us, even Americans, as long as we're willing to admit that America is something of a recent creation, but that it has its precedent, right? Like, the whole, country made by immigrants, a sort of globalist culture. That's not new. That is not new at all. It is only the colonizers, like, what do we put it? How do we put it? It's only the colonizer filter that makes it look like it didn't exist, but it always existed. Globalism always existed, and it always existed as far as people could travel and communicate. Always. It's just that they didn't recognize it at the time because so much of Western thought was predicated on the idea of there being a perfect past. which actually in many ways is the Gnostics' fault. Because they were the ones who came up with, they were the ones who popularized the idea of the material world as wicked. And Christianity adopted that. It took that part of Gnosticism, which had always been part of Christianity. Like Gnosticism had almost always been part of Christianity. But Christianity at large took the material world as being inherently corrupt, but did not take the idea of God and his messengers being the source of the corruption. Yeah. Onimusha's great. I love Onimusha. Yeah, you know what, Cashel? I would agree with that. Onimusha 1 is a legit Japanese fairy tale. Onimusha 2 is like a corny samurai drama. And Onimusha 3 is the big budget Hollywood blockbuster. I would absolutely agree with that. Oh, yeah, the Beijing retelling of the American Revolution where you're like, what? Yeah. Because of the way that Asian culture mythologizes its historical figures, man. That has always been a thing. That has been a thing since before Western civilization was a concept. Asia had been doing that. Then again, much of the idea of China predates the concept of Western civilization. Western civilization as we envision it right now, actually quite recent. And that's even before we get into when we actually started calling it Western civilization and officially recognizing it, which is even more recent. That concept, I believe, actually is younger than America. The idea of Western civilization as we currently envision it is, I think, younger than America itself. Have I played Elden Ring? No. No, I haven't. So I have no opinion on its mythology and lore because I haven't played it. So I haven't experienced it. So I've no. All I know is that there are a lot of great pictures of a blue witch with 4 arms and big tits. That's the extent of my knowledge of Elden Ring. Yeah, the idea of an Anglosphere is like, yeah, it's only a few hundred years old. Yeah, it's not that old at all. And when you keep going back in history, you'll actually find that concepts like that are actually quite recent, historically speaking. Like arguments over who's a real Athenian, who's a real Roman, who's a real Egyptian, blah 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 blah, all that bullshit. Yeah. It happens way later on. And it actually seems to be a thing that kind of comes in almost at the tail end. Yeah, right as it is about to change. Right as it is either about to change or disappear. Which makes a certain amount of sense, right? Like they really want to codify themselves when they feel threatened. People really want to codify things when they feel threatened by stuff. It's a human attempt to gain understanding of themselves and their relationship to the world, but it's a very flawed one. But it still works, kind of. It works good enough for emotional reasoning. Yeah, hell, the nuclear family is not even 100 years old. It's only like 70. Like, that is an invention of the post-World War II era. Right up until the end of World War II, there was no concept of the nuclear family. Families were homes were multi-generational. Now, it would be common that there would be homes with only 2 generations, that being parents and children. You know, like, it happened, and it was quite frequent. But it didn't become the way Americans were supposed to be until basically the 50s. It literally comes in with television. You know, the nuclear family really wasn't a thing until like the Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best era. And in many ways, those shows were propaganda for the new idea, the nuclear family. Like, think of it this way. This is gonna break your brain. Hold on. This will break your brain. It's a Wonderful Life was a movie made just as that change was happening. Just as that change was happening. And it is actually part of that propaganda cycle. It is for real. It's just not what the story's really about. The story is really about, like, this man in the community. But what is he doing? What is his position? What is his function in the community? He gives home loans. He gives home loans because they wanted to project the idea of the American having their own house was part of the American dream. That's why he works at a savings and loan. As opposed to Potter, who represents the old robber baron model. You know, for all the damage that the idea of the nuclear family has done, it was supposed to be in opposition to the old robber baron model. It's also why George Bailey is so friendly to immigrant families. You know, the old robber barons are super fucking racist and won't let Italians fucking have homes. It's that recent. The nuclear family is that recent. Crazy, isn't it? I'll give you another crazy thought. Goth lasted longer than the hippies. Punk lasted longer than the hippies. Taylor Swift has lasted longer than the hippies. If in 2000 the hippie revolution had happened, we would already be in the 80s. Yeah. Now, I will say this. I will give the 60s counterculture this. It did, in fact, have a much more dramatic impact on the culture. Because it filtered it changed the mainstream. It absolutely did. No denying that shit. You know, and no fucking show makes this more clear than Mad Men. Like, the people who wrote Mad Men really understood this. It's kind of why when they get to the 60s in that show, like, there's all this, like, shifting shit that has to be done. Because that was real. Before that, they were relying on the American dream, which, remember, is less than 20 years old. It was less than 20 years old. It was very new. And now they're having to make this radical shift again. And everyone's scared. And everyone's afraid, because while there is great economic prosperity, everyone's afraid of losing what they had gained from buying into the American dream, even though it had already started falling apart. That's why people hated the counterculture of the 60s so much. They were afraid that it was going to lead back to darker days. But they couldn't see how these people would lead them back into this historical darkness. They just knew they wanted to preserve the present and ensure the future. It's not hard to criticize the hippies, but it is very hard to demonize them. You have to go with the drug thing. It's all you've got. It's all you've got. It's all they had. Oh, these people are stupid and uneducated, like every older generation says of a younger generation. It'll always, 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 whether or not it's true. Sometimes it's true. Usually it's not. But that criticism always exists. Because I can tell you, when the real collapse of education starts, I can tell you right now, it is when the super religious start to get their way with education. That's when it actually starts. It's not when a new technology comes along. You know, it's not the cell phone. It's not the typewriter. It's not fucking writing. It's not the fucking printing press. It's not papyrus. It was none of that shit. Which, yes, by the way, all of those were accused of making the current generation stupider. All of them. All the way down to writing itself. That was going to destroy the mind of the current generation. Another reason why I'm like, yeah, fucking Aristotle. You know, fucking. Socrates, motherfucker! Because he believed that. Socrates believed that. Oh, writing was going to destroy the mind of the youth. Because then they wouldn't use their memory anymore. Well, turns out that didn't happen. And then going from writing on tablets to this new thing, this paper, which could be easily burned or destroyed. Oh, that was going to destroy the mind of, that was going to destroy all knowledge and, blah, 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 blah. Well, it didn't happen then either. They were right about one thing. It was easier to destroy. But tablets just crumble. And paper is easier to transport. So what I'm saying is if all the knowledge that had been lost was still on tablets, we would have lost a lot more of it. Yeah, Socrates nuts. Yeah, we would have lost way more of it. We would have lost way more. And then printing press comes along, right? Oh, well, this is going to cheapen the value of knowledge and, blah, 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 destroy the youth. Nope. We experience a boom of critical thinking. Radio, this is going to destroy the blah, blah, blah. Nah, it didn't really happen. Television, it was arguable. Because everything that on it was so stupid. Movies were going to do it too. It wasn't like a play where people had to really memorize the lines and know them by heart so that they could deliver them. No. They only had to do it once. Oh, so cheap. Then it wasn't really the internet. Like the internet, we didn't really think that by and large. Because it's kind of hard to say that a system that's intended to preserve and share information is going to be bad for education, right? Like that's a really hard one to make. But then came the cell phone. Oh, now people are never offline, which is a real criticism. Like that actually did happen. That actually is a thing. But it didn't make people stupider. Cell phones did not make people stupider. I will agree that there are a lot of other things that cell phones did that I think are bad. But it didn't destroy the mind of the youth. What I do think it did, though, because it was like the first piece of technology that allowed for this. Whereas the others were very neutral as far as this was concerned. But but the cell phone did empower a form of interaction that was purely online and had nothing to do with physical space. But that's because that was the first time that had become widely available. It simply wasn't possible before. Simply wasn't possible before. So what you got but like I said, it has not, it's not the intellect that suffered. It wasn't critical thinking that suffered because of that. Social thinking is what suffered. And it demonstrates the great difference between social awareness of social issues and social interaction. Because I think it's done great thing for the awareness of social issues. It's done fantastic things. But I think it has done very bad things in terms of people's ability to connect with each other on a personal level. And that's where it has created a problem. Whereas I would say that the problem with a lot of the previous forms of internet technology is that it was way too prone to manipulation through propaganda. It empowered propaganda. And the internet did that too. The internet did that too. But on top of it, there was this social cost that took a few generations to manifest. Like, it's not really until like the what we refer to as the millennial generation that we even see it start to happen. Well, the funny thing is, Super Anime Girl, I think that I think that's I think the bubble effect in and of itself is not, I don't consider the internet to be, or the cell phone to be like at fault for that. People do that anyway. But in my opinion, the real cause of that bubble effect is the consolidation of media. That's what did it. That's what did it. The consolidation of media, which has less to do with physical technology and more to do with the development of capitalism. Because the more and more, I'm going to be honest, the farther along capitalism goes, the more it looks like communism. The more it looks like the worst aspects of communism. You can quote me on that. And it seems, and here's the funny thing. For some reason, and this I also believe, but it's a belief, but it's a belief, meaning it could change. It seems like specifically socialism prevents that excess, prevents that particular way of things going wrong. It prevents, I think, communism and capitalism from reaching the same disastrous point. In capitalism, it curbs it curbs greed, but that's also present in communism because that greed is a human failing. You know, you're not going to, there is no social or political system that can eliminate greed that will eliminate greed. But there are systems that can curb its excesses. So the way socialism does this for capitalism is that it enforces, no, this is the people's money. This is, the people need to be getting more of a benefit from their labor. We're not saying you can't even make the most. But we are saying that there is a minimum you have to give everybody. There's a minimum that everyone must benefit from. everybody. And in communism, the redistribution of wealth, it says everybody, not just the loyalists. Communism goes wrong through its party loyalism. Capitalism falls apart because of the excess of the few. And they do end up resembling, they end up looking like the exact same thing. But there are many different paths to the same point. I tend to see socialism as an absolute necessity. And that America has far too little of it. It needs more. It needs more socialism. But in order for that to happen, we're going to have better communication about what socialism actually means for America and how it should be implemented. And we can't do that because there is an apparatus that is invested in the vilification of socialism itself. And so those who are against it are just against it. They don't know why. They don't really know why. They know the answer is because communism always fails, right? That's the answer to them. But like, they don't actually know what that means. They have no idea how it is that communism went from this ideal to famine. They don't see how capitalism did the exact same thing in the Depression. But it did. The entire Dust Bowl was entirely a fucking product of capitalism. Just like the potato famine in Ireland was. It was pure colonialism that caused that. You know, the fact that we have an honest discussion about a thing when one side of the discussion goes into like literal hysterics over the subject being brought up. Like they literally go hysterical. That's what hysteria looks like. That's what it actually is. It'll just be like the post office. What? My mail gets delivered, doesn't it? Sounds pretty good. We could always get a job at the post office. Oh, so socialism guarantees jobs. Is that what you're saying? You know, like, the negative is that you gotta stand in line. Which, even that's not true. Did you know that you can arrange to have your mail picked up from your home? You can, especially these days. Oh, I have to send this through. I have to send this through the mail. I have to take it to the post office. It's like, well, actually, no, you don't. You can have them pick it up. They'll do that. I mean, you do have to tell them because it's not a common request because most people just go down to the post office. Or at least they did. Post office works mighty, mighty fine. And it was even better before, like, they started fucking with it. Oh, but the Pony Express only lost the mail twice. Yeah, but it came like once every 6 months. You complain when the post office loses your shit because it's unusual. It usually gets there. Public libraries are great. Sometimes I wish mine wasn't such a bitch to get to. There's local libraries in San Francisco, the local branches, as opposed to the big one. The big one is great, but I hate going to it. And the branches are a little small. They're a little on the small side. And that's the thing I don't like about them. You know, I hate going to a library that isn't like. I hate going to any library that doesn't have at least 2 levels to it. You know, it's just not enough because I tend to want to read about some pretty obscure shit. So, like, my local branch library is not likely to have anything that I want outside of fiction. Library at Sac State. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The big libraries are fine. Big libraries are great. Yeah. It's just that San Francisco really only has one big library. And I'm like, could we at least have like 2 or 3 of those, you know? Like we could still have like the main branch, but could like some of the other ones just be a little bit bigger, please, so that I could go there and find something. Single 10-minute bus ride? Yeah, but I still hate doing it. I hate going downtown in business during business hours. What I'm saying is that to me, bookstores are more convenient until it comes time to give money. You know? So if you're not like me and still like don't mind riding the bus and all that jazz, yeah, library is perfect. I'm just a grumpy asshole, you know. And yeah, libraries are also a good place for gathering and social events. Yeah, yeah, particularly in like suburban areas. You know, the high school I went to was right next, was literally right. It shared a parking lot with the largest uh the main branch of the library in the area when I was a teenager. Like that was great. That was great because like, you know, you're already there, you know? Like 5 days a week you're already there, you know. uh hey Jack. Yeah, movie nights, conventions. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey Jack, just watched your review with Guru on the new Korean horror movie. Oh yeah, Exhuma. Yeah, it's good. It's a good movie. You know what rural America experience I love? Going on a camping trip, poking into the local goods store and seeing the old DVDs and VHS. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. 3 months strong in a rural area. That's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah, the internet is a little bit harder in a city because it has it, but everyone's using it. It has, but everyone's using it, and that there, it's a problem that way. So even though it's got really, 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 really good like Wi-Fi and internet, you're only going to be able to get so much of it because there are like several hundred other people using it. Well, maybe not several hundred, but like a few hundred, many dozens. Oh, new Wolf Creek movie? Ooh, interesting. Yeah, the internet is weirdly awesome, but if you go to a certain zone, it'll go from 100 to 0 in an instant. Yep. 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 All right. I think it's about time I think it's about time that I sign off. I want to thank everybody for coming down. I especially want to thank my guest again, Diamond Hagen. It's so good seeing her. We actually hadn't spoken in many years. Just after the whole Channel Awesome thing, we just kind of fell out of touch with each other. So I will see you tomorrow on Twitch about 7 p.m. And until then, Ave Satanas, Disco Inferno. And remember, Satan and I love you very much. And I'll check out that. I'll check out the trailer for The Heretic. Thank you, Jay Tolton. Good night.